Hello, everyone, and welcome to another cozy episode of Tapcaf Transmissions, our Star Wars Legends or Star Wars book podcast, where we go through and read as many books as possible. In the last few episodes, we have been talking about first Truce of Bakura, and then we went into the first four books of the X-Wing series by Michael Stackpole. Today, we are going to be talking about Darth Plagueis, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Mixter Eckhart's Ladder.
How is it going, Corey?
Good. How's it going for you?
Complain. I guess we still are technically a Star Wars Legends only podcast because we've not yet ventured into the realm of the new canon.
Yeah, if we were better at planning this, we probably would have done an episode on the Thrawn books before Thrawn came out.
Even Alphabet Squadron. Thrawn, did you read it yet?
I haven't read the third one yet, no.
Yeah. I don't want to spoil it for you or anything.
Yeah. Well,
very difficult to spoil.
As I said, this is going to be about Darth Plagueis, one of the last Legends novels to come out, written by James Luceno. So I guess we'll talk a little bit about him first, but then we'll go into the book itself. But this is sort of a stopover episode between doing the first four books of X-Wing, and then we're going to go into the next sets afterwards. Do you want to talk about what's coming up a little bit first before we get right into it? And
right, yeah.
That's going to be on your channel for the next episode.
Yeah, so as you guys know, we don't do this every week. We do this every 2 weeks. Next episode, we'll be doing Wraith Squadron, starting off a new sort of chapter. And we will be joined by another Star Wars YouTube channel, Star Wars Explained, who I'm sure most of you guys know. He is a huge X-Wing and Wraith Squadron fan, so I think it's going to be a really fun episode. And I'm kind of pumped to get back in X-Wing because this book's like a little heavy in a way. It's
definitely not a fun book in the same way that
a
lot of the X-Wing ones try to be.
Yeah. It's very character heavy. It's very like introspective almost. Not one dogfight.
In Plagueis? Well,
I think so. Well, there's not some N1s are blowing up an asteroid, but
there are some N1s that fly by, but there's, more importantly, zero references to Corellians being lucky, even though there is briefly a Corellian in the book. And there's also no references. There are some references to water metaphors when they're in the opera house. But
they specifically say that it's like that the opera was overflowing with water metaphors, basically.
Which I overflowing with water metaphors.
Thing that I really like about this book, though, and is because I read it and I get like 30 YouTube videos out of it. I'm like set for the next month.
Great book for us. It really is a book that is very heavy on references to other parts of Legends, and a lot of that does come from James Luceno being the author, since he was brought into the Star Wars universe as an author right before the Yuuzhan Vong War project started, where they kind of wanted to have a more coherent and consistent narrative going on. And at first, James Luceno was brought in as someone who had read all the Phantom Menace Star Wars books and was a fan of those. And he was sort of put in charge of the overall narrative, writing the overarching storyline for the Yuuzhan Vong War before he went in and wrote some of the individual novels there. So James Luceno was one of the better authors for that.
Force, right? And then NJO, I mean?
He wrote one of the earlier ones.
I think Agents of Chaos.
Yes.
1 and 2, yeah.
And because Agents of Chaos was only supposed to be one book at first, I think. And Dark Tide was supposed to be 3, and then that got shifted around. But either way, that's kind of what James Luceno is good for. Or that sounds really rude. That is what his strong point is. What I meant. That is what you can look for a lot in.
You say he's got a pretty cozy niche there.
Yeah, very cozy niche. It's great to be able to have that kind of a cozy niche coming out of the back door in our last episode. But
oh my god. I actually tweeted about James Luceno because I reread the book not that long ago, and was asking because I wasn't as familiar with like his kind of the background that you just explained about how he was kind of like a legend scholar almost. And I tweeted at Pablo and I was like, so when an author this book, half of the conflicts, for example, we'll talk about Vidar Kim later, that comes from another comic, and you see like the Inchori crisis comes from that's from a
Comic,
book, I think.
isn't it? Is it from a?
But like,
Yeah, it's from
and
earlier.
then later, just like there's references to like how Dooku was part of the grand plan, and I recognize that one because that's yeah, I think it's called like where it like time skips with masters and apprentices. Not important, but anyways, the point is he makes lots of references and kind of big plot points like that. But as we'll get to, even small plot points like referencing the Bedlam spirits, which are a pretty kind of obscure part of the lore. So I was curious whether like writing a book like this, um, look to someone from the Lucasfilm writing staff or like one of the lore masters to help them with that, or do they just do it on their own? And the way Pablo responded is that it depends on the author, but for Lucino, he's just basically like totally immerses himself in all the lore, all the work, basically everything. Because this has references to video games, it has references to the Marvel comics, like the old original Marvel comics. It's got references to role playing game adventures, of course, other novels. He like this book came out at a good time in a way because it it kind of got to bring together a really kind of rich of material. But on the other hand, there wasn't a whole lot that he could build on with this book, you know, because we know how it ends. The book starts off with Plagueis being killed and Palpatine kind of rejoicing in that. So it's kind of like it's not quite a catch-22, but it's kind of like a win-lose.
Yeah, this is something that you kind of touched on with the Thrawn books, and I think a similar problem comes up with Darth Plagueis where uh, they can start in a fairly open place, or he can start with a fairly open place with this book, but because we do know exactly what it's working up to, and because there's so much that needs to be covered towards the end of what they're working up to, the last third of this book is kind of taking place simultaneously with the Phantom Menace, and it's kind of a set of little vignettes where you just see what Plagueis was doing or what Palpatine was doing between the scenes in Episode 1. So it does feel like it starts off really strong, but I think towards the end of the book, it gets kind of locked into
Yeah,
what it has to do, and it does
great.
suffer a little bit for that. So the fact that it has so much for lore is good because the
Yeah.
story does suffer a bit from that.
Yeah, so I tweeted about how I thought this was the best Legends book, and that is a bit of an exaggeration, but I do think the first third of this book, and maybe even the first two thirds, are like probably the best written
Hmm.
of any Star Wars Legends book, and they're so compelling because like you know about Palpatine being a big higher up, but there's not too many other material that are not too many other books that kind of explore how these like not quite enlightened beings, but how these super powerful sense, but in a political sense and in a money sense, like how they're operating throughout the galaxy, like all how they all interact with each other. You've got the Black Sun, you get the various Federation, the other big corporations. Then you've got like how they interact with the Republic and stuff, and like the internal struggles of like the banking clan stuff. That stuff is all super super cool. Sometimes you even lose a bit of nuance, especially I read it twice between this episode and the last one, and I noticed I picked up a lot more nuance on the second time, especially where there's kind of like big gaps in what happens, and stuff happens between those gaps, and you only really realize, and we'll get into this more, but you only really realize if you're paying attention. Cool, just to see like how a powerful being can go around, um, you know, doing business and stuff, which is kind of a you wouldn't think it'd be exciting, but they do a really good job of it.
Yeah, it's also a really dangerous thing to do for a book. Like he had to take on the pretty daunting task of doing a full backstory for both Palpatine and almost set up the entire Clone Wars, which could go very poorly, but he did, especially in those parts of the book, a great job setting up how Palpatine became who he was. Like with anything else where you're showing that much backstory, you get into risking like ruining how people
Right.
see whatever it was, and
because Palpatine's never been a character with nuance.
Yeah.
And arguably he doesn't in this book. It depends. This book just something kind of interesting at the end where Palpatine kind of renounces like public, like he kind of says, "Yeah, I've been putting on an image," but I'm not totally convinced. And I know I said we talked about this a few times. This is just kind of our opening salvo thoughts on the book. But yeah, so is like it'd be very easy to introduce something about the character that breaks him. The only case of this book doing so is with Maul. Like he treats Maul differently than he's been treated, especially in canon.
Yeah.
I actually really like this interpretation of Maul, him just being Sith, but kind of more like a tool. And I think canon and the Clone Wars, I guess more new canon stuff has kind of taken that in a different direction. But and they've changed things too. Like in canon, isn't Talzin technically Maul's mother? And then in this, she's just his mother's somebody else.
I don't know about the new canon stuff as much. I haven't watched those episodes of the Clone Wars where I think that gets set up mostly.
Yeah.
But that also counts for Legends anyways. But
totally.
Is this the first place that kind of pointed out that Maul wasn't really a Sith Lord in the actual succession of Rule of Two? Or had that been established before?
I'm not sure, to be honest, because in the Phantom Menace, for example, and everything that went off the Phantom Menace, the Jedi assume that he is, and maybe George Lucas even intended for him to be. I don't know. So this would have been, I think, one of the first that kind of dove into that aspect. Yeah.
Yeah, because probably spoiler. Well, jumping right to the end of the book there, but Plagueis dies around the same moment that Maul gets sliced in half, and even though he's not dead, that kind of ends his apprenticeship with Sidious, who doesn't really even know he's alive. So there was never really a point where Maul was a legitimate apprentice. He was just secret potential apprentice.
Maul was kind of a mishandled character in Legends too. Brought him back, but he never got a definitive end like he did in canon. Like there was the story that the old wounds, that wasn't actually technically part of the Legends continuity, kind of adapted into the canon Rebels episode. But like, I don't think Maul ever really got a fitting end. And at one point, he's resurrected to fight Vader. Kind of a strange little,
yeah,
kind of a strange little. This book has an interesting kind of, the rule of two is sort of a, even though at the beginning Plagueis basically says that he's moved on from the rule of two, first because he wants to kind of be a sole ruler, then later because he wants him and Palpatine to rule together. But a lot of the book is kind of about the Sith fighting their kind of baser instincts almost at this point to like revert to the rule of two. In that kind of master's dynamic. Palpatine, according to him at least, he never sort of gives it the idea that he's going to kill his master. And then you have them each kind of looking at new apprentices, whether it's Dooku or Maul. Even Venomous is looking for apprentices at one point, it says. It's kind of an interesting take on like the Sith and their baser instincts.
Well,
and
at some point early on in the book, even Plagueis is talking about how they're not the only dark side practitioners, or even necessarily the only Sith, just the only Darth Bane descended Rule of Two Sith. So, I guess that
I kind of chuckled when I read
Sith,
that.
But...
Yeah, Yeah, for me that was kind of like a bit of a recognition. Legends threw a lot of dark side users like into a pretty
Yeah.
small time period.
Well,
It's
then you have
interesting
the
though.
Tribe of the Sith who's alive the entire time.
Yeah, and
So
there's like tens of thousands of them apparently. Um, the Tenebrous way.
I haven't read it.
It was like a short story in Star Wars Insider 130. I had a copy of it actually, so I read it before this, and it kind of how I guess it's kind of an interesting place to start off before we go into the actual plot of the book. I can give just a basic. So for those who don't know, Tenebrous is Plagueis' master. He's a Bith. Bith are like an incredible. They're the guys that play the instruments in the cantina. Incredibly intelligent species, and the Tenebrous way basically explains, because one of the first thing that happens in the book is that Plagueis kills Tenebrous, and the Tenebrous way explains that Tenebrous had kind of foreseen the rise of a kind of great shadow power, kind of like something to end the conflict between the Sith and the Jedi. He calls it the One Sith, interestingly, which is Sith group later on, but then he kind of sees that as Palpatine. He changed some of his midi-chlorians into maxi-chlorians. I'm not joking. And after he dies, he basically throws his maxi-chlorians inside Plagueis' like mouth.
I knew this
He's
book
like
had a lot
slowly
of daddy
starts.
issues, but this is taking it to a whole new direction.
Yeah, and then he slowly starts to. Then he like can kind of see the future, and he realizes that Plagueis is going to be killed by Palpatine. So he shoots his maxi-chlorians back out into space, and then in a perpetual loop of him dying, and it's really weird. It's a super quick read, but I don't know if it's supposed to be completely canon, but most things in the Star Wars Insider were. So
All right. Well, that's something I was unaware of. But thank you for
maxi-chlorians.
enlightening me on the Maxi-chlorians in Plagueis Mouth.
Yeah,
There's
that wasn't.
how do you not take it that way? Like
Yeah, it was strange. I do like the idea of Bith science. It's kind of cool, but to the proper a proper breakdown of what happens and discussion.
yeah. So I guess we start off with Tenebrous and Plagueis on that was Beldemnik, right?
Yep.
Or no, another planet may have been,
Did
but
Paul Demnick their first on?
I can't remember if it was Beldemnik that had the Cortosis ore or if it was another planet they were at before that they were there. But either way, they were looking for Cortosis ore. They had been given some information on where to get it, and Cortosis ore is important because it's a material that can resist lightsabers. What they actually planned to do with it was not super. I think it had something to do with the army that Plagueis wanted to build later. But,
Yeah.
I don't know that it's ever explicitly stated that that's what they were doing it for, because Tenebrous isn't
Yeah.
ever super connected to that. He was more into being the Dark Lord of the Bith science.
Dark Lord of the Bith science.
And Plagueis and Tenebrous realize that they've been kind of sent into a bad situation that will result in their explosions if they stayed there. So as they're running out and away from the explosion, some rocks start to fall, and Plagueis sees his opportunity to kill Tenebrous. Which,
Yeah, he basically yeets some rocks on top of him.
yeah, Tenebrous is trying to hold some up, and Plagueis is going to like help him, but instead of lifting the rocks, he instead brushes him with the rocks, and
I'm
Tenebrous
not a team
doesn't
player
immediately
in that
notice.
moment.
No. Is it just me that got the impression of Tenebrous of being extremely incompetent in this book?
No, I think the book kind of is meant to seem that way because he he doesn't recognize Plagueis' power,
Mm-hmm.
but And then, not to go back to the Tenebrous Way too much, but in that it talks about how aspects of Plagueis' life probably is the fact that he is wanting to beat death, but I think it's clear that it's more than just that. I think he has a fear of death.
Mm-hmm.
And Tenebrous Way talks about the fact that he brought that on purpose and for a bunch of convoluted reasons. But yeah, it does seem pretty clear that he didn't have a full grasp on being a good master. Like he's kind of into like fatalism almost.
Yeah. Well, one of the, I guess, themes of the book is how the Sith Lords, no matter how strong or experienced they get, they end up fixating on whatever their one thing is.
Right.
And for Tenebrous, that becomes the science, and it blinds him to what Plagueis is doing. And for Plagueis, it becomes his life science, or his Midi-chlorian science, which kind of blinds him to what Sidious is doing. And for Sidious, I guess it's ruling everything and also living forever, and that blinds him to a large shaft next to him.
Classic.
But
irony too, because even Plagueis, I think right after he kills Tenebrous, he talks about how just that, and then later he says like many Sith of the Bane lineage have put the kind of grand plan back because of their individual, I think he calls them like foibles and like eccentricities. So like kind of the exact same thing where he becomes obsessed with prolonging his life indefinitely, and not just like Plagueis is he doesn't want to just be able to transfer his essence to another body or whatever else. He wants to live in his body forever. Basically, so he kills Tenebrous, and the very first thing he does is kind of Glorians die out.
Yeah, it's kind of super creepy what he does. It's almost like Dexter in a way.
Yeah.
Because Dexter gets obsessed with all the blood, and then just with Plagueis, it's all midi-chlorians.
Yeah, he's like standing over the body, sniffing it for like an hour.
Yeah, he had no plan to get off the planet, which was great. So he smuggles himself out, and really, it just seems like a really poorly planned, opportunistic way to kill Tenebrous. He didn't seem to really know what he was going to do, just that he took the opportunity to do it.
I do really like the scene. So right after he escapes from the little cave they're in on Baldemnik, which is kind of described as like almost like a paradise planet in a way. He basically is just running. He runs until he gets to like the spaceport for a couple of days. It describes him like running through fields and like eating animals and stuff. And at one point, one of the local species comes out and sees him. He's like out to take he says he's like out to take a leak or something, basically, like butt naked. And he sees like just a flash in a cloak running through. It kind of made me think like that's how these would have like had, or whatever else legends. They see like some crazy immune Sith Lord running at flash speed through the fields.
Ends up in a Sith holocron somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
So he gets to the spaceport after going through the plot of Forrest Gump on his own, apparently. And he just decides to stow away on a ship. And initially he wants to convince them to just take him to Midlands, drop him off, and hide in their freezer. But they don't react well to that. So you get
free cash money.
Yeah, you get like a chapter and a half of being introduced to this crew of people. It's like, oh, are they going to show up in their own plots for this book? Nope, dead.
Yeah, because it reminded me of I think it's Outbound Flight. Thrawn is kind of introduced to a crew like that, but like they kind of figure into the rest of the book. And I was rereading this again. I was like, are these people in this book for like an extended period of time? Because like you said, it spends an hour and a half, and it's like Plagueis ripped their head off.
Yeah, you learn many of the individual traits of this ship. You learn how their command structure works. They're a democratic raider.
Captain is like was trying to pick somebody up at the bar the other night.
Yeah. And then Plagueis just starts slicing them up. And he seems to have not wanted to do it. He would have preferred to just
Yeah,
get dropped off, and there you go, pay him some money. But he does get a droid out of it, who is possibly the
the
best
coolest
character in the
droid
book.
ever. Yeah, 114D.
Yeah, he's the Oral of this series.
Yeah, except not quite. I don't know. I think Oral's a little cooler, but
Well, no one's as cool as
he,
Oral, but he's like the sidekick who's
I don't
actually
remember
better than everyone in the book.
once 114D trying to help Plagueis get laid. Not once.
I don't know if was Plagueis interested in getting laid ever. Is that something that comes up in the book?
There was a part where it talks about how there was talk among his people because he'd never taken a wife, and I thought it was going to be like, I thought he was going to say, people, there were whispers because I'm so old, but I'm not taking on a wife. I thought they were going to say that people thought he was gay, but they're like, that I was married to my work. I was like, oh, well. But like all munes are like that, but most of them still manage to like spread the lineage. But
Hey, babe, you want to spread the lineage?
yeah,
Palpatine has a lot of allusions to being kind of a womanizer,
yeah.
and then is it the Umbaran senator or something that he
Sly,
ends up with? Yeah.
Slymore, yeah. Jedi
But
Prince Ken, because I have a
oh
whole.
god,
I
yeah, we have that's for a future discussion apparently.
there's one part where he's with what's his name
Sate Kinman.
no Vidar Kim, and after Kim's family dies, and he's like Ronhar is the only way to pass on my lineage as you will someday with your children. I was like, oh my god, he knows about the Jedi Prince Kin.
That was so weird. That's just so creepy. His first thought there when his family dies, like, my lineage. Gotta retrieve my Jedi son.
And spread the seed, like recall my child, like men stay fertile basically until they die, so he could have figured something else out. Just saying.
He could have been the one to make the Naboo uh,
Yeah,
monarchy follow his lineage.
right.
Missed opportunity.
Opportunity. One thing I like about the Woebegone, well, one thing I thought was I was taken aback by is they say the word dumbass. Thanks.
On the Woebegone? Is
I
that
mean,
like the
usually,
most? Isn't that the most intense swear they're allowed to use in Star Wars? I don't think it's.
well, sometimes they use the word bastard or sometimes they use the word hell, but it's very rare and it's usually an older material.
Mhm.
Most Star Wars books by that era were substituting their own words in, like,
Criffing and Carablast now.
yeah, Emperor's Black Bones.
I thought that.
Yeah. So I was just like a little surprised. That's like I was reading, I think it was Alphabet Squadron the other day, and they said the shower's in the bathroom, and I almost like got sick. I was like, you mean the Santa Steam's in the refresher? Like, what is wrong with you?
Language police here? Come on.
Yeah. But with the Woebegone, we also get our first bit of like, I guess it's like fatalism or determinism, where there's kind of like this whole discussion throughout the entire book of like to what degree the Force and the universe is guiding the actions of the Sith. The Sith are making their own destiny because Tenebrous basically believes that, yeah, you can't alter the Force. Like, we'll assume the mantle when we get the chance. We can't do anything to speed it up. And then at one point, Plagueis, when looking at the, like, after he slaughters the crew of the Woebegone, are dead, like according to they would have been dead since the moment he gazed upon the freighter. Like, that was basically set in stone. Of a topic that
Yeah.
makes its way throughout the whole book.
Well, Tenebrous sees it as like the will of the Force, and a lot of the Jedi see it that way. But for Plagueis, whenever he talks about that kind of stuff, if he talks about fate, he's basically using fate as a substitute for his will. So they were predetermined to die ever since he laid his eyes on him, but because he was the one that put himself there, and he's not really ever subject to fate. He sometimes gets like rebuked by the Force later on in the book, especially, but
Yeah.
he seems to put himself above anything else that he thinks applies to anyone else.
Yeah, and it does seem like it's like, I mean, obviously it's partially a philosophical question, but yeah, it does seem like there is some sort of, whether it's free will or not, I guess it doesn't matter. But clearly, you can act outside what the Force plans because later on, they do get kind of chastised by the Force with the creation of Anakin and also all of his subjects.
Yeah. So we get him appropriating 114D on the ship.
Mm.
He flies himself to Mutilinst, and that's where we find out his alter ego, Damask.
Right.
Where he is the head of Damask Holdings, which he inherited from his father, which is one of the more powerful families on Mutilinst. And I guess, are they technically within the IGBC, or they'd be associated with the IGBC, not really part of it?
It's kind of weird because at the beginning of the book, like the Damask Holdings, it seems like a pretty well-known company. And it almost seems like they're kind of like a shadow organization. Like he kind of formally dissolves it, but I kind of got the feeling that kind of work together. Goal. So I don't think they were technically part of the banking clan, but I do feel like they were.
Yeah, it seems almost like the banking clan was more of a trade federation situation made up of smaller groups, including Damask Holdings.
Yeah.
Because it was Sonhill or Larshhill was his kind of second in command, and then Sonhill ends up
right. Oh yeah, that's a good point.
or chairman of the IGBC. And I guess Sonhill would be Larsh's son?
Yeah.
At first I thought the Tonith that they mentioned was Por's Tonith, but he very specifically doesn't use a first name, Por's Tonith being one of the admirals in the CIS.
Well, yeah.
But it's a different Tonith.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because like I found it a bit difficult to follow the chronology of this book, or just like to remember how far away we were from main events, because when's the first period? Is it like 68 years before?
I think it's 76 to 74.
Right. So Palpatine spends like 20 years in the Senate, I think, before becoming Chancellor, and then there's at one point it's hard to remember whether like this is a character that you know or like a relative of the character. Like they have a Tarkin. I was like, is that? I couldn't remember if that was.
Well, they had Ranulph earlier on, and then at the end of the book you have Willow, so actual Tarkin.
Yeah, and I couldn't remember if that was his father, but I think they're just cousins or something.
Yeah, part 1 is 67 to 65, and that ends with finding Palpatine, so BBY. Then the next one is 56 to 54, like page 180 something. Yeah, 54 to 52. And the last section, which is the longest one, is the 34 to 32. Yeah. So ending basically with the Phantom Menace.
It's kind of interesting how these like time periods are used, because you see them set up plans. Like a good example would be the and it doesn't give you an explicit conclusion of what happened, but by the time you jump forward to the next sort of time period, you've seen the results of their plans.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They set up just enough that even though you are taking that 10 and then 20-year gap, you still kind of get an idea of what they were up to, and it doesn't feel like they've done nothing in that time. Just that you have the main ideas, and you know that they're developing relationships is a lot of what they're doing. And then you kind of get all those years for Garjula and Jabba to do whatever they've got to do, and
that's a really good example because you kind of see it from the very beginning, like until the conflict. You don't see how it ends up.
Yeah, where Garjula wants to take control of Tatooine, And then later on, it's like, oh, Gardula and Jabba are fighting over Tatooine. And then after that, it's like, oh, I'm going to finish taking over Tatooine from Gardula or Jabba, who can speak Basic, as we were all, I'm sure, very aware of. And
yes, I was not surprised by that at all.
What does that sound
It's like in I think Last Command or Book 2, there's a Wookiee who can speak Basic because he has like throat cancer or some shit. I don't remember what happens, but there's a Wookiee that can speak Basic, and in the audiobook it's terrible because it takes like 10 minutes to get through a single line because they're trying to make it sound like a Wookiee speaking Basic. It's awful.
I guess it makes sense as long as they can make the sounds, and Jabba can clearly understand Basic.
It's like a power thing. He doesn't want to have to, like, if he can get the drill, like, yeah, he respects Damask, and Damask is big pimp, so you don't want to, like...
Yeah, the latter-day Sith are pretty high profile in the galaxy. Like, Palpatine, obviously, becoming Supreme Chancellor. Ego Damask being head of all finance in the galaxy, almost. And being a Sith Lord. And even Tenebrous, as Regis Gnome, was a starship manufacturer designer. So he had at least some level of high profile.
Yeah. I mean, at the very end, someone mentions Tenebrous's name, and they're like, oh yeah, I remember him.
Yeah, and like, he basically buys Plagueis from his parents. Like, he sets them up, makes them have Plagueis, and then takes Plagueis. So he had some kind of real-world political pull, other than just being evil McSith Lord.
Yeah, and that's the part that's the coolest, I think. Because you see the grand plan being kind of put forward, but especially with the earlier Damask chapters, there's a lot of like just kind of day-to-day stuff. Like there's that one chapter where like Smart to pick up a new set of light bulbs for his genetic rape cave in the basement of his secret island and stuff.
All the listening to people's complaints and meetings, those were fun. But then
the HR complaints, yeah.
Then we get I guess with the meetings, the one thing I do want to talk about is the thing with Gardula wanting to get off of Nal Hutta and get Tatooine with Plagueis' support, but in return for this, Plagueis wants her to basically grant Nar Shaddaa to control of the Dug family.
Yeah, Bos Cabra,
right? And which is currently under the control of the Black Sun somehow, but Nar Shaddaa, like, you want to leave Nal Hutta, but you have to give control of the moon.
Yeah.
It seemed like that would be where the Hutts have the most control, and she would have.
Yeah, I kind of felt like, I don't know if they wanted to give the planet to Bos Cabra, or like I kind of just felt like,
well, not give control of the whole planet, but like basically
they just wanted
to control all the
to let him operate there.
Yeah, but if Gardula is trying to get away from the other Hutt clans, then how is her influence going to stretch that far into Hutt space?
That's a great point.
But right after that, I guess, is when he's out for a stroll and gets attacked by Darth Venomous, who he assumes is a clone.
Should we explain the kind of meeting he has on Sojourn?
Sure.
That's what leads to that, right? So Plagueis, basically, there's a lot of like, throughout this book, there's a lot of references to like, everyone thinks that the Sith have been, dead for a long time, and there's various people, they learn that the Sith have returned or that are still alive, and they have various like levels of knowledge about them. But they've kind of managed to wriggle their way like into kind of popular culture, or like, like their iconography, for example, can be found everywhere, like in architecture or whatever else. So one of the ways this happens is of Ego Damask, or Plagueis' grand plan, is the fact that he wants to sow as much kind of, I would say, has two aspects. One is to kill all the Jedi and kind of reestablish Sith rule, and the other, not necessarily. I guess this wouldn't have to happen, but or at least the kind of reformation of the Republic into something led by the Sith. So a lot of what Damask is trying to do throughout this book is set up little conflicts, making allies who will cause trouble. And one of the ways they kind of talk about doing this is at a big event he has every year, at least at the beginning of every year, Sojourn, which is kind of like, I forget what it's called, but there's references to, in the real world, basically camps where lots of really rich and powerful people meet, like former presidents and stuff. This is basically the Star Wars version of that. So they all come to this planet, they do rituals and stuff, and they kind of decide from behind the scenes how the galaxy will be run. And throughout there's lots of like Sith rituals thrown in that no one else really realizes, but Plagueis mentioned. And at one of these retreats where they do stuff like hunting, and they live in like really basic cabins, like in caves, basically, just to form like a sense of camaraderie. He's attacked by Venomous, who is another Bith Sith.
Another Bith Lord?
Yeah, Bith Lord.
So, Plagueis at first thinks Venomous or Venomous, which I've always gone with Venomous just because it, like, Plagueis, Tyrannus, Maul.
I base everything based off how the audiobook says it.
Okay, well, that's probably
correct.
I don't think
for myself.
I don't listen to any of the words, so I just read them. But Venomous then. Venomous attacks him, and Plagueis thinks he is a clone of Bith, a clone of Tenebrous, using his Bith science. But it turns out he is just a regular old run-of-the-mill Bith, potentially, actually, who was trained up as a potential replacement for Plagueis, or a potential test for Plagueis. And Plagueis kind of wipes the floor with him, and then
not at first, but like
after he realizes what's going on.
Okay, this guy's not a total joke, and then he just kicks his butt.
Yeah, and
he daddies him, and he's like, "Eat this plant," but I don't want to. And he's like, "Buddy, I don't care. Eat it."
So he's more daddy issues for everyone. As soon as he says that Tenebrous is dead, he's like, "Can you be my master now?"
Yeah. Like, no, something much worse is going to happen.
You're going to go live in a vat, buddy.
For like 40 years.
I'm going to kill you so many times. But before, or I guess after Venomous gets put into permanent coma so that Plagueis can do all of his midi-chlorian experiments on him, he's basically the patient zero for all of Plagueis' midi-chlorian experiments. He finds a list in Venomous' logs of potential Force sensitives that he can track down to be his own apprentice. And so there's like 2 or 3 chapters of him chasing down these people, and
weird little side adventures.
Yeah, there's like the Force sensitive gambler who's a shapeshifter, turns out to be a shapeshifter. Then we get the Nautilin, which is what Kit Fisto's species is. Where
I didn't realize
that. So just basically picture the half-naked Kit Fisto from the original Clone Wars cartoon, and that's what's going on for most of this point.
Also picture fully naked Plagueis at one point, because he goes for a little dip, doesn't he?
When he's waiting for him?
Well, no, at one point he swims somewhere and he says he strips naked. And I was just like...
Ooh, that sounds wrinkly.
Okay, I don't want to be explicit, but just imagine what Mune look like. They're like long people, so...
They're long people?
Yeah. So...
Thanks. I hate it.
You're welcome.
Well, we also get introduced to the Muanoid phrasing instead of humanoid, because that's who Humana said.
Oh, yeah.
which comes up a few
I thought that was
times, which
pretty
is
funny.
interesting. Because
You-
Plagueis is
a
basically
good meme.
raising the most humanocentric, or the leader of the most humanocentric faction in history.
Yeah.
So good on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I always gotta get a chuckle when he says, "I'm a good mune" or something. Or like, I just need a good mune in my life.
They really skipped over the pages where he's doing like on his Star Wars Tinder profile, swiping through the feeds.
Yeah, it's a shirtless picture. Oh,
Oh,
that reminded me too. At one point, it talks about how Tenebrous and Plagueis are both in excellent shape. I just imagine like a scene of them like doing P90X together or some shit. This is very important to the Sith.
welcome to the Order of the Sith Lord, sponsored by Beachbody on Demand.
Listen to
Remember to
Tony
use your
Horton.
checkout
He's very
code.
powerful.
That checkout code Darth Bane is awesome.
Oh man.
The Sith get a profit, you get a great Beachbody on Demand.
Every bottle of Shakeology supports the grand plan.
Get wrinkles and jaundiced eyes like ours in 30 days or your money back.
Man, that's funny. It is. They're always describing like Plagueis as very like almost translucent. Like you can see like his heart's
Yeah,
beating and stuff.
that just gets worse over the course of.
He just like shrivels up, and he's like probably pushing 200, but towards the
Yeah,
end of the book too.
he's actually. I don't think he's quite that old because no. Well, towards the end of the book, yeah, he'd be about 170 maybe.
Yeah, because when he meets Palpatine, he says well over 100 human years, I think.
Yeah, because he's apprenticed to Tenebrous pretty early, not super
Yeah.
early, but fairly early, and he
Like
talks about
15, I
how
guess.
it had been almost 100 years that he had been apprenticed to Tenebrous.
Oh, okay.
Or he talked about, at least he mentioned it being 100 years before that Tenebrous had been working with his own master, who was a Twi'lek.
Right.
But,
I don't know how do Twi'leks live that long?
well, it doesn't really say how long that Tenebrous was with the Twi'lek. Just that it has to be like the maximum that he'd been with Tenebrous was 100 years.
Yeah, and I think at the beginning of the book too, it mentions that they had been together for longer than most humans would live.
Yeah,
So
which based on our discussions in the first few episodes,
at least 500
anywhere
years
from
old.
50 to 7,000. Yoda's actually a human. That is just what people look like when they're 900 years old.
There are a lot of long-lived species in this book because Hutts, like Jabba and Plagueis, are kind of described as having quite a history together.
Yeah.
And then Plagueis also has a whole. So he's got like this island, which I really like the description of. I thought it was really cool. But I forget if he says he's got an art or a science wing dedicated to long-lived species. I think he says Hutts, Toydarians, and but yeah.
So, anything worth saying about the Force-sensitive gambler? I don't
No,
think.
I mean, I feel like Shiadu is a pull from an RPG story, like the whole Shiadu race, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Oh, they do mention the wheel, which is a game. There's also a space station called the Jubilee Wheel, and I thought that was pretty cool. The latter was named after the former, like the space station's named after the. It's kind of like a roulette game, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I also think I'm pretty sure there's a section in one of the books too where that deals with how casinos handle force-sensitive people, which.
Well, for this one, they basically just say we just assume that all the Force sensitives are with the Jedi, and
Yeah.
then hope for the best.
Yeah.
But we get that one, then we get the Nautilin, who is the one that was being protected or in prison near Bedlam, or on the planet of
Right.
Bedlam. which is near the
By the
rift to the
pulsar, yeah.
Bedlam space that other
Yeah.
transdimensional beings.
Yeah, they just mention that rift, believed to be the playground of transdimensional beings. Like,
they look
you
like
think
three
about spending any
hats.
time there, Plagueis? Like, might be some science over there.
Nothing to be learned here. But do the Bedlam spirits have midi-chlorians? Because otherwise, who gives a fuck?
Yeah,
or maxi-chlorians, even better.
They are, I believe, is the correct term for them.
Was there one after the?
Yeah, the Achori.
Right.
Or the Iktachi, I mean, sorry.
The Doom and Gloom lady.
Yeah, who gives a very, very accurate reading of the future. Basically says exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, she would have been more interesting to spend more time with, but nope.
I also find it funny, too, how at one point Palpatine says something about, like, how he hadn't met any Force-sensitive beings who weren't, like, or whatever, but, like, this whole book is basically just, like, Force-sensitive beings, or, like, there's a ton of time where Plagueis will, like, got a bit of the Force in him. Like the captain on the freighter, I think, bit of the Force in her.
Yeah. Well, I guess it makes sense with Plagueis being so focused on midichlorians that like everyone has some sort of potential or strength of midichlorians. And you get all this stuff with the Inkori where it makes a shield. But this was probably one of the weirdest sequences in the book for me, which, especially now that we've spent so much time on it, hypocrites, but
it's like it could have been cut almost totally.
Because this is after after they talk about the plasma being on Naboo, so we already know he's going to go to Naboo, and we already know that Palpatine is going to be his apprentice, so we already know who it is and how it is and why it is, but then we just have this side quest of people, none of whom end up mattering. So even just having this happen before we hear about where we're ultimately going to go and care about would have improved it, but it just the whole time was like, okay, can we just go to Naboo now?
Yeah, or even if the other, like the gambler is boring, the fish is boring. If they had made everyone as interesting as the Iktachi, then it would have been fine. Interested in what you had to say.
The point of the Nautilin was basically just like show what a Darksider looks like who can't be a Sith. He's just little Jedi.
I guess interacting with Jedi. I guess.
But if you want to do that, I feel like you could get more of that with an exploration of how they portrayed Maul in the book, and just put that time towards him. But
it's kind of weird what they do with Maul, because a lot of it they like set Maul up, and it doesn't say this, but it's basically like you can read his books and stuff if you want to figure out what happens.
Yeah.
But his like missions and stuff is stuff that happens in like other novels.
Yeah, this book would really benefit from having a bunch of like footnotes of for more on see this, because that's basically what the book is for.
Palpatine is in fact being a little baby here.
Yep. Palpatine.
So let's move on to that. In the way that it's kind of it's not super convoluted, I guess. How basically, as we mentioned at the beginning, explicitly say this, but when they're mining the cortosis, it ends up being that they were given information that I guess was actually meant to hurt them, because there was this kind of gas there. And they tracked down the people who gave this information at one of the Sojourn meetups. They tell them, okay, don't kill us, please. Here is some information. There's a big source of plasma, which they can use as energy on Naboo. And at this point, it's not the Naboo we see in episode 1 even. It's like Naboo is totally backwater at this point. They're like nearly isolationist. They've got no big spaceport. Additional, they don't even allow speeders on the street. So yeah. There's also an election, or at some point there's an election going on, and there's an unnamed monarch who's been ruling for some time. Nationalist monarch, and they're facing off against King Tapolo, I think, at this point. And Palpatine is the whole Palpatine family isn't right now, but they're sort of royals, like they're associated with the monarchy. Um,
They're like a
so
major house of the Naboo Game of Thrones.
yeah, like I feel like there's probably been Palpatine monarchs in the past.
Yeah.
Palpatine isn't a traditionalist, though. Unsurprisingly, he wants kind of Naboo to join the greater galactic community. So he's feeding information, scandal, and stuff about what's going on to this current faction over to the other side, basically. And that's how Plagueis and Palpatine meet for the first time, because the Damask Holding is supporting. It all gets very complicated when the comes in and stuff, and there's deals to basically they want to modernize Naboo so they can get the build a new spaceport, build all the mining stuff, export all the plasma, and yeah, there's like kickbacks. It's very complicated, but basically.
Yeah, so Plagueis gets introduced to Palpatine. He like goes looking throughout campus for him.
Yeah,
So just picture if you are in university or have gone to university or even just in whatever level
one
of
big
school you're
ass
in.
tall boy comes up to you.
This strange old man walks in and looks for a specific student who has never met him. This is entirely inappropriate behavior, and there should be a review of school policy going on. Uh, but because of
Real
his
tall dude.
own because of his own daddy issues, Palpatine like immediately latches on to Higo, uh, because he doesn't know he's a Sith Lord yet. But just like immediate benefactor. He's like 18 too, so he's
Yeah, because he's like, I think he's actually 17 because when Plagueis leaves for the first day, he basically is like getting texts from like Palpatine, like miss you, like what's up, hey with 2 Ys, hey with
call me on
three
my personal
Ys.
number. Hey, you want to kill your family for me? It'll be great.
Yeah.
So
And yeah, so as you said, a lot of daddy issues in this book too, because Plagueis has some as well.
Daddy Tenebrous, then his daddy. Like I thought of it first during one of his many sad thoughts about Tenebrous and how he wasn't good enough for him and just wants his approval. And then he talks about his actual dad. It's like, oh, this is literally everything with that. And then with Palpatine, when he eventually does murder his parents after his dad is basically saying, we don't want you talking to that Mr. Damask anymore. And he slaughters his entire family with his bare hands.
Yeah. It's very Palpatine-esque too, because like the way they describe it, like he's got his like claws out and stuff, like scratching and like throwing force lightning and stuff. And his dad is basically like, I should have killed you when you were a child, but you were too damn strong. I actually really like that bit. I'm doing a video on it about how Palpatine's birth was like probably side reaction to like the light being way too prominent. It,
Hmm.
it it's like even though, so like the very first time Palpatine gets angry, like really angry, even before he's discussed like the Force or anything, he's just like fuming, just real pissed, walking around on a pathway, and just like there's wind blowing, like there's like creatures scurrying like into their holes and stuff, like the
Yeah.
grass is like blowing around, and Plagueis is like, holy shit,
I can make storms too.
isn't it? But he says like this creature must have been like birthed from the Force, like not from flesh
Yeah.
and blood. And then later on, when Palpatine is having a little fit with his dad because he's not letting him go out and see his friends, um, is like, you were unnaturally strong when I tried to swaddle you, and I didn't believe that you were mine, so I had you tested. Not a nice thing to say.
Yeah. I should have had him tested for the Force.
Yeah.
Then he could
And
have been
then
Anakin.
and then he gets bulkheaded. He throws him into the ship, and like at this point, so the whole fight they have is pretty damn dangerous.
Yeah, and he even like slaughters all the guards too afterwards. His
And
mom hears
his
him hit the bulkhead, like, What's going on in there, honey? Oh, nothing.
Reminded me of
Just
my mom.
slaughtering everyone. Don't worry,
Be fighting
you're
about
next.
something stupid. My mom would be like from the kitchen, "What are you guys fighting about?" I wouldn't let him. I wouldn't let him swaddle me.
After he kills everyone, he calls Plagueis, and Plagueis is like, don't worry, my guys will take care of it. You're gonna show back up on the planet. Your family's gone. No one's gonna ask any questions.
Yeah. Yeah, and then he kind of like he does like some red pill pickup tactics by not calling him for a week and showing up like way later than he said he would.
Yeah, he lures him into becoming his apprentice, and then that's sort of like the end of this section where I have you now, and I'm going to just be a dick to you now. You've fallen into my trap, and there's no escape.
Yeah. The way he talks about young Palpatine is very similar. Have you read the episode 3 novelization?
Yeah.
How Palpatine talks about Anakin, like it's almost like a grooming, like
Yeah, that's basically all it is with all the Sith, where he does the same thing with they kind of treat Dooku. Both of them are doing the same with Dooku, actually, Plagueis and Palpatine. He doesn't really bother with Maul.
No, because Molly just straight up steals and locks on.
Yeah. Then he does a bit with Anakin while Obi-Wan's watching.
Yeah, it's like basically they try to separate them from their family and like their support, and then they force them into action and to like a point of no return, basically. But Plagueis is like thinking about Palpatine. He's like, "Oh, I've got to be very careful with this one. He's very supple. But what an ally he would be." I'm like, ew, like your big immune hands, like just a very creepy creature.
One of the things that I did think was worded kind of weirdly was when he was like he took Palpatine to Megiddo and was just trying to like make him as uncomfortable as possible. But,
yeah.
I haven't brought you here to acquaint you with my past, Sidious. If you were of a species acclimatized to these conditions, I would have brought you instead to a desert world. If you were an aquatic being, I would have stranded you on dry land. Like, why don't you just say... I would still have brought you to a desert world.
Note 2. I was like, can you imagine how inconvenient it would be if the next Sith Lord you were trying to raise was like a water-only creature? You're like trying to... It's like a whalodon or something. It's like, I've brought a very large cargo ship to take you to Coruscant. Unfortunately, there's no ocean, so you have to stay in a swimming pool the entire time.
You're just sitting on like the main concourse outside the Jedi Temple with this giant whale, beached whale on the front of it. All the Jedi walking past.
Got like a group of
I brought you here to acquaint you with discomfort. This isn't just because you were a fish. If you weren't a fish, I would have put you in a fish tank.
Like a group of like slaves with just buckets of water, just like pouring. Finally, some respite.
What species would make the dumbest Sith Lord? Because we've seen like Oppo Rancisis and Jedi Hutt, but there has to be one species that
Woebegone just... too, like the space dragons. Those are pretty funny. Chadrafan are pretty good, like Techly.
They have like arms and legs and stuff. But
yeah, what would be the worst? In Jedi would probably be really bad, but I know the worst. Crystal's called again from Namchurios. Those ones would be pretty bad. Toydarian, I can't imagine being scared by a Toydarian.
Floating around. I think a Dug Jedi would be pretty good. A lot of dexterity going on.
Yeah. That's a good point. You don't really see the hive mind species develop force sensitivity.
There is one of them that comes up somewhere, I think.
Thinking about the Swarm War, the entire Masterpiece trilogy?
Close. Shit, I think I did a video with him in it before. But it might have been Legacy era or something. Anyway. I'm sure we'll get there eventually.
I sure hope so. Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to think what other species would be.
Verpine Jedi.
Because-
That sounds like it might have been him. Anyways, we're now, I guess, into the second set of, or it's the second timeline where we kind of open up finding out that stuff like the Trade Federation and all these big corporations are getting Senate seats directly. Because at some point during the first section, the second section is when the Supreme Court of the New Republic had the Citizens United decision. So they get political representation in the Senate for Techno Union for Trade Federation, which was done through Munilant's kind of lobbying for them. But there's also a question throughout the book of, do the little worlds that kind of belong to the Trade Federation also get representation?
Yeah, no taxation without representation is basically the entire second act.
They're also upset about their inability to protect themselves, so they want to be able to arm all their stuff, and then Valorum doesn't want to get rid of. Well, Valorum's not there yet, but the Republic doesn't want to get rid of the protections for the Rusan Reformation.
Right.
What was the guy's name for here? The Supreme Chancellor. It was Womanizer McBurney dude.
Mr. Corrupty McFace.
Yeah, that's the one.
What was his name? Because there's 4.
No, Valorum was the last bit, and he was there for 10 years, but there was...
It was...
Dyrus, that's the one.
Dyrus, yeah. Also, can you do me a favor, Corey, right now?
Yes. What? Maybe.
Look up Supreme Chancellor on Star Wars Wiki and go to the canon page.
Okay.
Just look at the
Jesus
picture.
Christ.
Look at Palpatine just flexing. Holy shit.
It looks like, pictures people
it's like
do.
Palpatine knows just how big his nuts are. That's like...
when like people take bathroom selfies and then they go into Photoshop and they do like the extra Ripley bits so it looks like they have muscles and abs and stuff, but then they warp the doors behind them and it's very obvious that it's bad photoshopping.
Yeah, like you see like a mirror just like completely bulge out. Yeah.
That's basically what that looks like. Palpatine was making his Tinder profile, and that's the second time that's come up today.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess that's our.
Well, little Jedi Ken has to come from somewhere, buddy. Oh god.
But we get a bunch of the little side missions that Plagueis and Palpatine are doing, kind of buddy cop for a few pages, where they go to Buoyant, Ipori for training.
Oh yeah.
Then you get the nice scene of the Cursed Massacre. So that's this planet that has been stricken from the records, where every new Sith Lord goes with their master. All the locals run out and fight him. They kill one, and then they run back in, and everyone's happy.
Yeah, so it's weird how so like they're slowly advancing too, so it's like very slowly they're like getting better weapons and stuff. But it's kind of interesting how, and I want to talk about this later, Plagueis is kind of a softie too. Because like remember what Bane said. But like if Palpatine was there on his own, like he would have killed all of them and then probably like killed everyone else on the planet too, just because like why not? Our full Sith, we will return to this place and we will honor those who helped us gain power. And I'm like, he's doing that shit? Like, God, no. I don't know.
Yeah, Plagueis seems to be fairly just interested in whatever his own goals are, and he's willing to do whatever he wants or whatever he needs to do them, but he doesn't go for quite as much wanton destruction.
Right, Palpatine he's not like cruel. I mean, various Star Wars books do this to various degrees, but Plagueis at least he sees that. Oh yeah, there. I like how you cropped it out too, or was it a?
It was a PNG. It already had no background.
So podcast listeners, just as I said, go to Wikipedia, Supreme Chancellor, look at the canon picture. But oh right, so Plagueis sees the Sith as like the custodians of the galaxy almost. Like the caretakers, like enlightened rulers. Yes, sometimes people will die because it's for the greater good, but still ultimately for the greater good.
Yeah, the justifications for it are kind of weird though, where it's like, do they actually? Yeah. They don't even necessarily go for the greater good, just for making others pay for not doing the greater good.
Right. But he does specifically say a few times that, like, we're doing this because we will be enlightened rulers and we will, like... Yeah. That's whether that's truly their intention, I don't know.
Well, towards the end, when... was it when he was killing him? Or Vin Diesel? The Nabookan guy? Where he says that...
King Verona?
Who's good or bad? Like, I determine what's good or bad, so...
Yeah.
Go fuck yourself, basically.
He's kind of like... Well, just like, yeah. I'm an enlightened being, like, I'll do what I want.
Yeah. He's kind of trying to set himself up as a Celestial, where the Celestials are the one that determine the flow of the Force. They're the ancients of the Star Wars universe, the Forerunners, and
until Anakin goes and kills them all.
Well, that sucks for them, doesn't it? But I think there's the other ones that just get absorbed into the Force, and the father, son, and daughter.
I don't want to talk about
corporeal. Yeah, it.
Like a little Big Mama Abeloth. Come on, baby.
Technically not a Celestial.
But is even more so kind of a like an almost benevolent ruler, because it only mentioned this once, but one of his strategies to beat the Jedi was to make a computer meet the needs of the galaxy and take care of everyone so well that the Jedi wouldn't be needed anymore. That's his strategy.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, like that's like the least Sith thing ever. Like, we're gonna destroy the Jedi by...
At some way down the line, they would have been taught by Darth Plagueis, who was just creepy business dude, right? So that's basically how you get to Tenebrous and Plagueis.
Yeah. Because so Plagueis, and kind of back more on topic, Plagueis and Palpatine discussion that is really prevalent in New Jedi Order and in less so, I guess, in Legacy of the Force as well, but cons there with whether the dark side and the light side are different, or whether they're like, that matters. So let me just find, what is the term they use again? Potentium theory. There's no inherently evil or good side of the Force. It's just intention. So if you use Force lightning, or even if you kill somebody, as long as it's for the right reasons, like they'd say on The Bachelorette, it's not a problem. And that's basically exactly what Vergier is saying in like Traitor in the other New Jedi Order books before she got like that stupid Sith retcon. That's kind of like how Jason feels sometimes too. Like, as long as you're right, it's fine. But then Plagueis disagrees. He presents it as fact. I don't necessarily believe that it is so. He says, well, there's an inherent difference between a volcano and a glacier, being like, whereas in light side powers are fundamentally different.
Mm-hmm.
But then later he says that the dark side of the Force and the light side of the Force, or how people, point where it talks about how one of the Sith Lords made a plague, basically. They wanted to make a plague to strip away the Force from the Jedi. And he's like, well, but we access the Force just the same as the Jedi do. So
Yeah, is Palpatine and the Sith he trained, they seem fundamentally different from the other Rule of Two Jedi, where or not Jedi, Sith, where they're a lot more like they're obviously a lot more overt because they're the ones ruling the galaxy, but they seem to go a lot more for the cruelty angle than the other more recent Sith, and I guess that puts them more in line with the very old Sith. But
yeah,
like you have Tenebrous who just wants to do his science fairs, Plagueis who just wants to live forever, Lectivus who just wants to make lots of money, and that's still all in service of taking down the Jedi and the Republic. But then you get Palpatine who basically trains Maul as an attack dog, and then trains Vader as an attack dog, and then Dooku is already his own sort of political idealist, but he seems to fit more along with how Plagueis.
Dooku's like the ultimate. Because, like, when you look at some of them, it's almost like we've got kind of the same goal as the Jedi, which is make galaxy a good place. The thing is, we just have a different doctrine or a different theory on how to best do so. So, passive, we grab the Force and we use it to make a good universe. But then other Sith are just like Palpatine at times, for the sake of being cruel and self-serving.
Yeah, and Plagueis was kind of trying to get rid of the jealousy between Master and Apprentice, and they'd rule the galaxy together doing their own things, where he'd be sort of the master of the ethereal realms, and Palpatine would be the actual face of the Sith and leader of the galaxy. So they had those skills that were good for whatever, but then Palpatine's like, no, murder! So
you fool. Yeah. I mean, he's not. I wouldn't say he's like necessarily a cruel being. He doesn't kill things just to kill things. I can't think of too many examples where he kills something just to kill something.
Palpatine or Plagueis?
Like even when his creatures, like when he's leaving Sojourn, instead of just slaughtering his creatures, he lets them roam free, or like will be cruel when he needs to be, like, you know, when he's taking slaves or whatever else, but he doesn't, it doesn't seem like he gets pleasure out of doing things that are teen who will like just kill to kill. Like they say even that he's like that he's got the like mind of a mass murderer or something.
Yeah, well, like Plagueis' scenes, it seems more like he's doing the dark things in service to whatever it is his goals are, and they're incidental, which is still like you're evil, but like he's doing them for that purpose, and then like Higo Damask is who he is, and then Plagueis is this identity he has and does what he needs to accomplish those goals. But with Palpatine, is like whenever his scenes are there, like, oh, this Chancellor Palpatine is super fake, and I just want to murder someone, and I'm none of these things that I'm presenting to these people. Whereas with Plagueis, there is that element of his personality, which is Higo Damask. And Higo Damask is also a giant shitlord, which is like being a Sith Lord, but there's at least that other real part of his personality.
Yeah, I agree. That makes sense to me.
Palpatine is just straight psychopath, sociopath.
Yeah, and that's Revenge of the Sith novelization kind of, because even when Plagueis looks at Palpatine, he's like, for the first time, he's like different, and like in the Revenge of the Sith novelization, like Dooku, he's supposed to be an enlightened being. He wants to rule because he genuinely thinks that he's got the best plan for the galaxy. But then like he looks at Palpatine, and he like describes him as like a black hole in the Force, you know? Like he destroys just to destroy. There were other easier options for Palpatine than slaughtering his family, including his siblings.
Yeah. And then he blames Plagueis for like, you tricked me into it. Like, no, you really jumped into that.
Yeah, like Dad takes away your data pad for a day and you're freaking out.
And that's why you have to use Corey's data pad. Subscribe to Corey's. But yeah, so there's something I've described as flowing red hair at dinner and getting Palpatine. Uh,
Opportunity.
but we can probably skip over a lot of those. I mean, I kind of wrote it down because there was the introduction to some of the characters, like you get St. Pastage and Kim and Dorian, who shows up throughout this section-ish, but we're already an hour and a half in and halfway through the second section, so...
I mean, it is cool just to mention how many, like, important Imperials. I do like how in this book we see Palpatine especially, like, making, like, a cadre of, like, close to him. Like, Pestage is definitely one, who's, like, been in for a long time.
Yeah, Armand Izzard, so...
Armand
tying it
Izzard.
into...
What's the other one's name? Oh, Gradatus.
Yeah, Janice Gradatus. Lot
There's-
Dodd gets mentioned as being part of
Lot
Acabao as
Dodd.
well. Is Masameta included? Like, he's
Does
in the
he-
book, but I don't think he's ever included as part of their little group.
Does kind of include him as one of the conspirators because he's the one that nominates Palpatine. I think they kind of make a comment about that.
Well, no, it's
No, it's not
the Rodian who
Masameta.
nominates him, but it's Masameta who's like the co-chancellor, or not co-chancellor, vice-chancellor, who makes Valorim's job impossible for a while.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because at one point they say something about Masameta would have warned us about this.
Yeah. So he's included as, like, part of their outer group, but I don't think he's ever included as being, like, one of the main dudes.
Oh, Sly Moore, too, is mentioned. But yeah, he basically gets this collection of people, and that's one thing that's cool about, like, did with the Republic turning into the Empire. Palpatine is basically all these advisors and people working with him, and then when the Empire's formed, they get, like, an incredible amount of power. Like, St. Pestage basically runs the day-to-day of the Empire, from what I remember. I think they call his role.
Grand Vizier.
Yeah, right, Grand Vizier. These people who are, like, loyal to Palpatine get, like, an incredible amount of power.
Yeah. But soon after this, Palpatine ends up getting handed Darth Maul. And goes and puts him in secret. Doesn't tell Plagueis about him for a while, actually.
Was it like a few years. Yeah.
It was like, oh yeah, I'm just going to train him as, like, an attack dog for the Sith. And Plagueis doesn't seem that concerned. Throughout the book, he's not really that concerned about Maul.
Yeah, he's so... well, by the time... Orn Free Taa, that's another one. Did we mention him?
Orn Free Taa, I think... Is Orn Free Taa the Rodian who nominates Palpatine? Or is that a different...
He's not a Rodian, he's a Twi'lek.
Right. Rhodia and Ryloth are so close together that I just messed that up.
Right.
Yeah,
one's an ugly bug creature, one's beautiful Twi'leks, except for Orn Free Taa. But
the Rhodians are the best. Jocasta Nu gets mentioned. There's, like, some Jedi hanging around in this section, and Jocasta Nu gets mentioned as a master and a council member, which doesn't track unless she, like, left the council at some point. Because she's the librarian.
I didn't realize they specifically said she was...
Sorry?
I didn't realize they specifically said she was a council member, but yeah, that's a little weird.
I think she does get mentioned, so either just I
know she gets mentioned because I thought it was kind of interesting. When Plagueis is talking with I think he's just talking to the other Jedi about cloning. He almost says the word Camino, but it talks about how the dark side held his tongue, basically, and he's not able to say the planet name. And I assume that's because Obi-Wan asking her about Camino in episode 2, and if she heard him say that, then she could have put together the conspiracy. Jocasta Nu could have.
Yeah, she was too busy thinking that the archives were complete, though, so...
Yeah. Ignorant hog.
Wow. 34 hogs. But is this where Sifo-Dyas gets introduced? I think so.
Yeah.
And this
Yeah,
is
so
the
it's him,
conversation with
Dooku,
Dooku.
Qui-Gon, Sifo-Dyas,
Yeah.
and like eating or something.
Yeah,
And then she comes back.
they're talking about the Republic and how whether or not a military is necessary. And this conversation kind of
Yeah.
sets up a lot of the Clone Wars and Dooku's turn.
Yeah, and it talks about too how like the Jedi aren't supposed to get involved in politics, but then later they have like the big chancellor thing on the space station, and like they were there, and so is Jorah Sabayoth.
Yeah, that
So
would
much
have
for
actually
that.
been pretty close. No, never mind. That wouldn't have been.
Outbound Flight wasn't Outbound Flight.
Outbound
Well,
Flight
it
is
would have
after,
been.
but Jorah's had been involved in like weird political stuff at that point for a while, where
Yeah,
like Obi-Wan and or Obi-Wan jokes to Yoda about how like Jorah's Sabayoth is trying to get in front of holocams as much as possible during
yeah.
Outbound Flight.
Doesn't he also mediate a dispute between Dwayne Wogan? Pretty sure it says that in Thrawn. I mean, in Thrawn.
Hmm.
Jedi records, which I think is really funny. Just imagining crazy old Joris trying to talk to these like space dragons who are having a bit of a
Yeah, it's kind of he's kind of an interesting character because like he's supposed to be insane in the Thrawn trilogy because he's a clone, but then you get him introduced as like the original, like nope.
yeah. He's very very Sith like in Outbound Flight because he basically believes too, he's basically Dooku just with a longer beard. Believes that in an enlightened ruler, like enlightened Jedi rulers as well.
Well, I think the difference between Dooku and Sabayoth is that Sabayoth believes it should be him that rules everything all the
Yeah,
time, whereas Dooku is
yeah,
like, I'm willing to do what I need to make it happen. I don't necessarily know that it needs to be me.
yeah.
Where
Agreed.
Dooku is a political idealist, where he's upset about the direction the Republic and the Jedi are going, so he's more than willing to go with the people who are causing that to happen to fix the problems. But let's ignore that. Uh, for this conversation, though, Sifo-Dyas is kind of semi-convinced that the Republic may need a military. Dooku's there. Qui-Gon basically shuts down everything Plagueis says, but
Rude.
Dooku is semi-open to it and starts like confiding in Plagueis and Palpatine for the rest of the book. And Sifo-Dyas is just like friend of Dooku who is kind of sympathetic to things but also staunchly Jedi.
Yeah. I feel like James Luceno had a bit of a crush on Sifo-Dyas, just because like it's always describing like his big calloused hands and like his strong jaw and stuff.
Doesn't he kind of do the same thing with Qui-Gon?
Kind of, but I mean, blame him.
They are similar body type and hairstyle, just Sifo-Dyas is kept up, Qui-Gon's is down. So
This is like a squat version of Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon's like tall. Sifo-Dyas is like really short.
hmm.
This is important.
These are the details people need to know. But I guess the last section of this section, I guess, is that the Grand, what's the organization called? Like the Grand Consortium,
Grand Protectorate.
Grand Protectorate. Those leaders are upset that Plagueis has given Gardula Tatooine, which lets them have pod racing going on there, which is supposed to be Malastaire's thing. So they're upset at Plagueis, who underestimated them. Senator Lack Team, chief among them, who they had actually been considering as a chief of state or supreme chancellor candidate, but Plagueis really doesn't pay them any attention.
Screws them over in like 4 different ways.
Yeah,
because the Trade Federation are competing with them, and he's helping the Trade Federation. Plasma, which is one of Malastaire's things, and the pod racing thing. Just not very polite. Very emotionally intelligent, if I do say so myself.
yeah. These Sith Lords go around thinking they can do whatever they want, and they don't think about what they're doing to the little guy.
Yep.
And by the little guy, I mean the other very rich people.
One thing we didn't talk about, I guess we can mention briefly, is the whole we didn't talk about the Ron Harkim thing.
Right. So Ron Harkim, we brought up his dad earlier, where his whole family's dead, and Ron Harkim is the Jedi son. So King Kim wants to, or he wants to go
Senator.
to Senator Kim wants to uh, go to Coruscant and talk to him to convince him to leave the Order so he can come and have babies on Naboo.
Yeah.
But when he's there, he gets assassinated, and at the funeral for Senator Kim, Palpatine meets Ronhar. I think that's the same event, and kind of like does the same thing he does to Anakin, where it's like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if there were politicians and Jedi who were friends? But that never actually
the whole
goes
thing
anywhere.
is taken from Republic 64, issue 64 of the Republic comic. It's like the exact same thing that happens. That's what's set up. And that was like a 2004 thing. So the characters of Vidar and Ronhar have actually existed for quite a while. Kind of retold and modified for the book.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And eventually, Palpatine orders the murder of Ronhar. Basically, so.
Well, technically,
because
Palpatine orders the murder of every Jedi.
Well,
there was a movie about it.
He orders the murder of Ronhar on an earlier occasion during the Clone Wars itself. But that was interesting to me because Ronhar is Vidar's for like a child, or sorry, to continue the line as we said. And it actually, I do get the feeling like Palpatine actually may have had some compassion for Vidar Kim. He was putting that on so Plagueis would underestimate him. What did you think about that?
I don't really think I got the impression that it was genuine. Like, I think he felt pity for him. I don't think he felt compassion for him. Like, he saw the sobbing mess and useless guy and was like, oh, you're pathetic.
I mean, they had like a long history together too. Like, he was probably the closest person. Like, he was probably Palpatine's closest friend. Like, or like closest thing he had to a father.
Yeah. I guess from that perspective, yeah, but I was just kind of thinking about like Palpatine's own family situation where he didn't really put much stock in that. So I did get the idea that, or get the feeling that he true.
Stream just went offline, by the way.
Uh-oh.
We can just keep talking. It seems like he sensed some unwillingness to murder him, so or if that was something he's putting on. Oh, we're back.
No, I do think that the unwillingness to, or the hesitation to murder him would have been real. But
then he kind of like rationalizes it away because he's like, oh, he's just like the other nobles on Naboo who I hate.
Yeah. But that does kind of shake Plagueis' trust in Palpatine for a little bit, but then he, without Palpatine's knowledge, organizes for Palpatine to be captured. And Palpatine kind of does his job, gets captured, and escapes the way he's supposed to. But Plagueis is very happy about that. However, at the same time, or at a similar time, the Grand send a bunch of assassins after Plagueis, and at the Order of the Canted Circle, where they're trying to, which is like a Mun secret society thing, where they're going to induct his right-hand man, Larsh Hill. But Larsh Hill loses his head instead, and every other Mun there dies. Plagueis gets like his jaw cut off, Alex style.
A pretty brutal injury.
Yeah, he gets pretty ripped up.
The throat gets ripped up too, I think.
Yeah. So he starts like drinking wine through his nose later in the book.
Yeah. Yeah, like he eats through it and stuff too, it seems, because at one point talks about him and Palpatine going out to eat, so.
Yeah, this is where Sate Pestage really becomes part of the Inner Circle, though, because in order to just survive, Plagueis starts using Sith powers, and then Palpatine gets there and also gets all Sithy. So they basically just look at each other and look at Pestage, and it's like,
you're in now, bud.
We can either kill you or you can shut up.
Pestage does seem to be pretty useful.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to give a fuck about any evil that they do.
He never seems to. Or interested in pleasing them. It's the same with like Doriana. I do like I think the relationship between Doriana and Pestage is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like Doriana is like kind of like I don't know. He doesn't get a lot of love, but he's a cool character. And then to be brought in like in a pretty major way in this book. Same with Pestage. Like Pestage was originally going to be like a character in Return of the Jedi, or maybe even Episode 5. So it's just really cool that those books will just play lip service to that sort of stuff. But like here, it actually shows the relationship being formed. It's not like some. It's not like some thing in the Essential Guide to Warfare that says that they were working together the whole time. This is like they actually are.
Yeah, there's that like the main picture of Pestage where it looks like they're about to drop the hottest rap album of 2019.
Yeah.
Is Doriana in that? Does he survive? Like he's not mentioned anything, but does he get retconned as one of those people?
Oh, you mean no? Doriana's dead.
Is he dead by then?
Yeah, I think they say he. I think he's supposed to have died like, or Yavin maybe, or yeah. I don't think he's one of the big advisors. But what's his name is the Naboo sender after Palpatine. What's his name?
Amidala.
No, the one between them. Oh, what's his name? We talked about it earlier.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
One, and I think there's another one that's name dropped in this book as well.
But
Sly Moore was too busy off making Jedi Knight Ken and others. Jedi Prince Ken, sorry.
After the assassination attempts, Palpatine sort of sees it as a failure on Plagueis' part. Like, is he fallible since he didn't?
And he totally is.
Yeah, spoiler alert. Yes, but Plagueis kind of he sees Palpatine's success in the kidnapping attempt as like, I can bring him into top level Sith knowledge now. We're almost equals, and starts showing him what he's been doing with Darth Plagueis. Takes him into his little secret lair, all the Midi-chlorian experiments.
Things that he loves, he says.
Yep. And Palpatine starts training Maul for real. They discuss that as well, and Plagueis is okay with it as long as he's not an actual Sith.
Yeah.
Can you say something?
Oh yeah, I think I lost you there for a second.
Did you get your vocal cords cut out and then?
Hold on. You can't hear me?
I can hear you. It's just you sound very, very deep right now.
Oh, that's happened before. Just a second.
I thought you became a Sith Lord.
Is it still bad?
No. You sound like you again, I think.
That's happened a few times, and like one time when I was streaming, my voice got dark. I was full into the Sith Lord thing. My voice got deep like that for a while, and no one told me. They thought I was like putting on a.
I wasn't sure if you were just trying to like make fun of Plagueis or something with this vocoder.
I should have used it. I should have said some evil shit.
Welcome to our Tapcaf Transmissions.
That reminds me, we did get at least 3 Tapcafs this book, I think.
Yeah, that's true. It went pretty early on, and then
yeah.
Yeah, we're getting into the last section here.
Yeah. One thing I thought was cool about the battle is like the Star Killer like move from one of the Force Unleashed trailers where like he slaps his hands together and like atomizes. And he does like a force squeal.
Yeah, there's a lot of not using lightsabers in this book. Where
Plagueis, he also does a Vader style blaster grab too.
Yeah, I think Palpatine ends up going and killing the Grand Protectorate people, and he's using Plagueis' lightsaber in that.
Yeah.
So I think he uses Plagueis' lightsaber more in this book than Plagueis does.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. A bit of fire throwing too, because like he doesn't actually summon fire, but he like manipulates it.
Yeah, there's the gas leak causing a fire in the grand thing. He like fireballs that.
Or in lesson about proper.
But I guess before we jump into this last section, which is largely just the plot of episode 1, but showing that Plagueis was off screen by about 10 feet every time. There is one thing that I'd like to discuss. If there's anything else you want to bring up, then we can do that when we're on your channel. I'm in charge now. This is Cozy Corner. But was Palpatine ever not going to kill Plagueis? This is something that you wrote on the page, so really it's you bringing it up. But I thought it would be...
Sorry, was he ever not what?
Was Palpatine ever going to go along with Plagueis' plan for them to rule side by side and not...
I don't know. Like, I really wonder, because just what Palpatine is like, because that last scene, it almost does seem like he's about to walk out of the apartment that they're in together. Damn it, it's like I can actually do it right now. I can kill Plagueis and I can lead it all. I do think he was, well, ultimate goal was always to lead. I do think there was more he could have learned from Plagueis. And I think he would have preferred to learn more, but the perfect opportunity came up for him.
Yeah. I mean, I think Palpatine was wrong to not want to do Plagueis' plan, but I don't think he was ever going to go along with it, so...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's hard because if you read the book right after reading it the first time, which like I did, I read it and then I reread it, and I was looking for hints early on about him not like agreeing with Plagueis, or him some sort of internal hint that he wasn't listening or that he had his own ulterior motive, and it doesn't really give you a whole lot of them.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it does come within the last section where I don't know if we need to go point by point through a lot of it. Just
no, I don't think so.
Because if you've seen episode 1, you know what they're doing, where they want to make a military, do we not make a military, blah, blah, blah. But Plagueis sort of gets more and more wrapped up in what he's doing, so the Midi-chlorian stuff, which from his perspective is because Palpatine is doing such a good job with the political machinations, and he's still helping with that, but Palpatine sees it as Plagueis losing sight of what's important, and doesn't see the importance of what Plagueis is doing in the same way that Plagueis does. But he also gets kind of insane.
Yeah, well, Plagueis sees it as natural. He's like, okay, you're doing this and you're doing just fine, so I'll focus on like my sort of the spirit realm.
Yeah,
and it's funny because a lot of time Plagueis goes out of the way to make it seem like they're not like rivals or traditional rule of 2 Sith, and Palpatine just misleads it. One occasion is when they're on the meeting on Sereno. Plagueis doesn't tell Palpatine because he doesn't want Palpatine to feel like it's a veiled threat, and then Palpatine finds out that Plagueis didn't tell him, and he's like, that was a veiled threat. Yeah, so it's Plagueis definitely did see the two as equal, and well, not as equal because he still does like really obnoxious shit, like he chokes Palpatine, although that's pretty early on, and he still describes himself as like the ultimate Sith, while Palpatine is like. So I think there might have been some sort of situation where if he stopped doing really obnoxious shit like that, like if he stopped referring to himself as the Grand Master behind the scene and stuff, maybe Palpatine would have been willing to work with him, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, he's towards the end, it's especially the last section where he kind of sees Palpatine as his equal, but he's still more powerful. He is the more powerful of the two as a Force user, in my opinion at least, and in his opinion. But I think he sees that as the thing that keeps him being the master and Palpatine being the apprentice for now, even though they were eventually going to be, I think in his mind, like joint everything. And I think if he had dropped that, like right around the time that Part 3 starts, that Palpatine maybe wouldn't have killed him immediately. But I don't know that Palpatine was ever going to go fully along with it.
Yeah, Palpatine, he's not like the type of person to. It's hard because at the end he explains that all of this, all of the stuff was his doing, but I don't think that that's correct.
No, it doesn't really hold up if you look back through and how stuff was brought up.
Exactly.
Some of it,
like,
sure, but
the clone army is a great example. Like that wasn't Palpatine's idea, but he claims that one. But that was something Plagueis had been working on for a long time.
Yeah, and before, like, he'd always wanted to work with Kaminoans on that before they come. Like, Palpatine is the one who basically suggests, isn't he, that Sifo-Dyas should be able to make the order, and then Plagueis will finance it. But even Palpatine's like, no, we can't afford to finance it until Plagueis says he can. So really, Palpatine taking credit for that makes no sense. But when Plagueis first meets the Kaminoans, his original plan is going to be to use the Yinkori, who he'd come across in his, or which he'd taken an interest in his studies, because the Yinkori weren't particularly smart, but they were still able to be resistant to suggestion.
Like an evolutionary thing.
Yeah, where they have like a protective force bubble from their Midi-chlorians, similar to how Ysalamiri on Mercure do, where they can't get affected by the force. And so he gets a specimen to study from a prison, basically, Yinkori prison.
That's because he gets the Yinkori the council, or the seat in the Senate, right?
Yeah, where he helps him with that, and then
like
in exchange he gets one. And it was going to be, instead of a clone army of Django's, it was going to be a clone army of Yinkori. But the Kaminoans were like, we can try, but
too crazy. Yeah,
we're not going to be able to get what you want out of that. So
I love the whole scene on Kamino, because the cloners are so like down with whatever.
Yeah,
they're like, you want us to work with Ravana? Yeah, sure. One thing that I thought was kind of weird, though, is that it almost seems like Plagueis puts in the order the first time he visits, because they're like, oh, the I don't remember what they call their leader, but the prime minister will be very happy with this. Yeah. And that's like when he's still dealing with the Yinkori. So like, it's kind of weird how early like Plagueis like sets up the whole clone army thing, only for him to, I guess, not go through with it later.
Well, I think he was still funding some of the research for it. He just hadn't ordered
that makes sense. Yeah, that does make sense. Okay.
But yeah, so I guess one of the other things that comes up in this is like they talk about Maul a little bit. Plagueis still not that concerned. He does get angry about like one way that Palpatine phrases our partnership, thinking it's about him and Palpatine, when Palpatine means Maul and himself, or vice versa. So there is a little bit of jealousy there, or not jealousy, but like some sense of, am I being threatened by this?
Yeah.
And
there's another one too where Plagueis says something about beings going past their like competence level.
Yeah. With the Trade Federation after they install.
Yeah, and Palpatine thinks he's talking about him.
Yeah. So I think that just shows like Palpatine was looking for reasons to jump on Plagueis. Yeah.
And someone said, well, this won't be the only time Plagueis will sleep, but Plagueis didn't sleep at this point. Because at the beginning of the book, he had his master, Tenebrous, had got to the point where he didn't need to sleep, and that was something that he kind of coveted. So he learns not to sleep himself. So it was really like a very unique situation. And Palpatine is kind of always on guard. After he gets choked out by Plagueis, not one occasion, he's always kind of ready. So,
yeah. They're both looking to orchestrate a rise for Palpatine to the Chancellorship. And they think the way they need to do that is to put Padme as the new Queen of Naboo to initiate a vote of no confidence. Or that wasn't necessarily the initial way they were going to do it, but they saw Padme as a good candidate to be Queen of Naboo, to help with igniting tensions with the Trade Federation and leading towards the Clone Wars and Palpatine's ascension. So that's what a lot of it focuses on. And I don't know that there's much that we haven't already talked about like the Naboo politics. Other than
no, I mean, the stuff about Padme is kind of interesting because she is a 14-year-old elected queen, but I mean, it's basically, it's not beat for beat like the Phantom Menace, obviously, but you're just getting different perspectives on what's happening. You see that more of it's being manipulated by Palpatine than you might expect. Plagueis is right there when Maul is getting his sort of talk with Palpatine about now the Sith will finally reveal himself or themselves.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, when when Plagueis finally does go to kill Vidar Kim,
Right.
he reveals himself as like Sith Lord.
You mean Varuna?
Or Varuna, rather. Sorry.
Yeah.
He reveals himself as a Sith Lord, but it's right after, or right before a scene where Maul is being sent by Palpatine to take out all the Black Sun leaders. And
Right.
I guess you'd have to imagine that there's a lot of the stuff that leads up to the Shadow Collective being done when he's on these missions, but
that's a book too. I forget which book that
yeah.
is. But yeah.
But Maul brags to when he's killing Garen.
Yeah, the leader. Yeah, Garen.
And Palpatine chastises him when he gets back. Like, if he'd gotten away, we'd be screwed. And I wonder if Plagueis did the same thing. Like, oh, yeah, he 100% just did.
Yeah, because Plagueis is like, well, whatever. Like,
yeah. Palpatine
like,
even tells
he
Plagueis, like, can you believe that Maul did this? Like, yeah, that sounds good.
Plagueis is like, bitch, I just did the same thing. Or I'm about to. I don't remember the timing, but
the part of the plan that makes the least sense to me with installing themselves in power, like, I get the idea of Palpatine being Chancellor and then Plagueis being like some kind of advisor, but it seems like Plagueis' plan is that as soon as Palpatine is Chancellor, he's somehow going to have the legal authority to just
like the next day. It's like the
him
commencement speech.
Co-chancellor.
It's like, yeah, that makes no sense. Like that part makes no sense. For one, like if you're about to execute the grand plan, which you are, the legal structure of the Republic isn't going to be super important for very long. So, like, you're just stroking Plagueis' ego. Let him be behind the scenes. Then when you make your new empire, you guys can be co-cutie emperors if you want. Like there's nothing that, like... Because if Palpatine is the Chancellor, he can do whatever he wants, basically, within, whatever constitutional limits. There's no advantage in having a second Chancellor there. I guess there's some, like, public, because at this point... like Hugo Damask had started to like reemerge after being crazy on the island and growing a immune beard. But it's just, I don't know. It would have made more sense just for him to be like some sort of elder statesman or something,
Yeah, just like keep trying to like have that image of Palpatine as the good Chancellor, the caring dude that get all that extra emergency power that Jar Jar grants him, and then eventually you can just do whatever you want, and Plagueis can be in whatever position you want after you destroy the Jedi. But if you like immediately get promoted to win the election to Chancellor, then appoint Plagueis, it makes...
Yeah, pardon my vulgarity, but I think Plagueis got a bit of a immune stiffy when he was like hanging out with all like the government people, and like, I don't know, I think he took a liking to the life.
Yeah,
honestly, because like
I thought you were gonna say when Palpatine was like reading his acceptance speech before he kills him. Oh yeah, tell me how great I
am. Okay, enough, Jesus. Yeah. Yeah.
I did like the fact that it was Kuat, the Kuwati senator, who was like, "We don't need a military. The Corps knows
bizarre.
Even though they had a giant fleet already.
And even though Kuat would be like the ones producing new ships, so like, why would they ever not want war? You know? It's like the most honest Kuwati senator ever.
No one else needs a fleet. We need a fleet.
Yeah.
And Maul's initial double-sided lightsaber was just two lightsabers welded together.
I imagine it being like a red-green type of thing. It's like literally duct tape or like...
Do other people get that reference? Was that a thing?
Probably not. Non-Canadians probably will not get that reference, but...
Just imagine a duct tape lightsaber with an old plaid shirt wearing lodge member.
There's one of Red Green's creations basically explains the entire show. They take a truck with a truck bed, they put a tarp down, and then they take a hose, put the hose in the exhaust, put the exhaust to the other end of the hose in the back of the truck bed, fill it with water, and make a portable hot tub.
Was that an Adventures with Bill?
I think so. Heated with the power of carbon monoxide.
Oh. Oh, we should do a Red Green podcast.
Oh, I'd be down. Red Green and Trailer Park Boys, maybe.
they hear about Anakin, and they both seem kind of surprised that he's there. So
yeah,
what does that do for the theory of Plagueis made Anakin?
Well, I think it still fits because they sense some sort of shift because it's like, okay, so 9 years back or whatever, they were meditating, and it's not exactly clear what they did other than that they shifted some sort of paradigm.
Yeah.
And then they felt some sort of reaction, and then the time worked up. It's like it's like a girl you met one night tells you she's pregnant. You're doing like the mental math. That's basically like what Plagueis and Palpatine are doing.
That Galifianakis gif in the background while Palpatine's thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
But I guess with the Force experiments, we do find out in this section that Plagueis has been successful. Palpatine and Plagueis are there, where they'd finally let Venomous die, but not before Plagueis had like killed him and brought him back 17 times until it was too much.
Just like what's his name, Bevel Lemelisk. Palpatine does that with in Legends later on, or I guess this is Legends later on. Yeah.
So Plagueis has like full mastery over his Midi-chlorian magic.
Yeah.
Palpatine has full mastery over the political sphere,
body politic,
and all this stuff on Sojourn in Plagueis' lab is starting to like die off.
Yeah, the Force is like starting to strike back.
So Force is upset at them, but he's going to leave anyways. And
the Force is like,
that's
very not cash money of you.
And the Force's will is brought to bear in the form of Garjula the Hutt showing up, I think.
Dropping a nuke on the boys.
And then Jabba shows up afterwards. I was not clear on the exact order of operations there. Like, was Jabba there the whole time and then fought off Garjula? Did she come and nuke them and then Plagueis?
Jabba's real bro in this book, though.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, get on, boys.
We Tatooine now.
Gotta come visit my party shack up in the Yunlin Wastes.
Boba Fett there.
We got an elephant or Ephant Mon, who's Force sensitive, by the way.
There's an alternate ending to this book, actually, where instead of Palpatine killing Darth Plagueis, Plagueis just resigns and goes and hangs out on Jabba's sail barge for decades.
Man, you know what? I'd take it. I do like how Ephant Mon gets name dropped. You know him? He's like the what's that species name again? Chevin, I think.
Yeah.
Like the Elephant Man, the like one of George Lucas's really ingenious names. And then later in Fate of the Jedi, there's a Chevin newscaster. Like they're like described as like being notoriously ugly. So
yeah, well, there's Chevins and then there's Chevs, which are basically humans. And
right,
there's Christina Lobi, the Jedi Master, who's a Chev, so basically human. But when Luke is setting up
I didn't know that.
The Jedi Council, she's part of it. And at some point in the books, it talks about her like unfurling her snout onto the table because I think it's Troy Denning thought that she was a Chevin. She was just
it's really fun. It's really funny to imagine a human doing that and uncurling your snout. It's like you crouch down and like put your nose on the table.
Yeah, that's basically those are the best hits at the Chevins right there.
Oh god, I did not know that. That's so funny. Yeah, for me, like when I read Jedi Master names anywhere after like New Jedi Order, they're just in and out. Like it's New Jedi Master every week added to the
Trisina Lobi and who's the other one? Octoramus, always kind of mixed together in my mind.
Big snout energy.
But Octoramus is actually pretty cool. So
Yeah. Yeah, pretty cool. Not that useful, but pretty cool.
She like gets angry and
Manages
hurls a
the
rock.
school.
There's a
Yep.
scene in one of the books where all the Jedi Masters are like sparring. That was pretty good.
Oh, on Endor, you mean?
Yeah, where
Yeah, that part's
Octoramus
cool.
like loans her lightsaber to Kyle or something, and then just starts
Yeah.
chucking rocks at everyone.
Back then, I remember that Kyle was a Jedi Master after not being
After
anywhere.
20 years of being MIA.
I do like that scene where it's Octa. I don't remember who else is there, but they're on the. I don't remember even where the Jedi Academy is, but the GA like that like he's basically like this torturer. He comes and starts like executing students. Remember that?
Was
Like
that
Jason sends him there, and he's like this really like sadistic guy, and he cuts off Octa's arm.
Osis?
It probably was Osis, yeah. Yeah, it was Osis. It's like late Legacy of the Force, like
Yeah.
second last book, I think. I don't know, I just thought that was neat.
Actually, was that Octoramus or was that Tion?
Oh yeah, that was Tion. You're right, sorry.
Because it was like Cam and Tion protecting them, which is really crack team of Jedi Masters.
Yeah. Yeah, I got them mixed up, you're right. Crack team of the best member. Got 2 Jedi Council members here. Who would dare attack? Literally anybody.
Oh wait, one of them can barely use the Force. I'm gonna throw some library books at you.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? Any other major plot points?
Let me just see. One thing that's interesting is I think he's introduced here, the Sith Darth Gravid.
Right.
And he's kind of like they kind of use him as an example of or like as a reason why like lots of Sith kind of information is lost, knowledge. And one thing that got me thinking about is like we also have kind of lots of exaggerations about the Sith. Like at one point, they talk about how, or Plagueis talks about how, ancient Sith could fly, they could summon lightning and poison and do whatever they wanted, they could transfer their souls. So it's kind of interesting to think about whether all those stories were true, or whether they are exaggerated because the records are sort of lost.
It's kind of an interesting thing where like game mechanics and comic book fights tend to become like the legends of the books.
Exactly.
Where they become the mythos.
Mm-hmm. Exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, I thought that was a pretty cool like way to handle it. Even like Bane is like, they don't fully know what's going on with him.
Yeah. So Dooku, I guess, comes up a fair amount where he is finally leaving the Jedi Order. And, well, I guess Palpatine actually kills Plagueis first before the final conversion of Dooku. So, when they're planning Palpatine's acceptance speech, he goes into, was that Plagueis' apartment? Or were they in Palpatine? Either way, someone's apartment.
Yeah, because Palpatine's about to leave, so they're in Plagueis'.
Yeah, so Plagueis is getting super drunk for some reason. They're celebrating.
Yeah.
And Palpatine is like going through his speech 73 times. Plagueis is getting annoyed, but Palpatine's just waiting till he gets drunk. We can't fight back. And then he just force lightnings the respirator that Plagueis has so that it would look like it just malfunctioned.
And then Plagueis just sits there, like absolute daddy move. He's like, try to kill me. He's like, he doesn't even do anything. He's like, can you do it? Can you do it?
I don't know, was that the alcohol or was that just...
I don't know. It is kind of funny though, like how he's this ultimate Sith Lord with full control over his body, but he can't help himself from getting drunk. Like,
yeah,
just stop. Like, just
did they ever try holding like a party for the Jedi where they'd serve themselves like ginger ale and they'd give all the Jedi wine, so then they just slaughter them all?
Or just like take really embarrassing videos of them like getting drunk and be like, quit the order, or these will make their way onto the HoloNet.
The Sith start TMZ.
Yeah.
Palpatine dies, or no, Palpatine doesn't die. Plagueis dies.
Later.
It looks like, jump forward about 20 years, or 30 years, 35 years.
36?
Okay.
I'm just fucking with it. I don't know.
I don't think
Probably.
that's true. But yeah, so Plagueis dies, and at the same time that Palpatine thinks he should be feeling happy, he feels sad. And he learns that that's because Maul's dead too, so he has no apprentice. Well, Maul's not dead. Maul is in half on the floor somewhere, and not dead.
Pulling himself across the... Never able to poop ever again.
R2-D2 style.
You know how Plagueis learned to eat and drink and breathe through his nose?
Yep.
That's what Maul did with poop and pee.
Oh, God.
Very sophisticated humor on this podcast.
Oh, that's disgusting. We've had naked Plagueis. We've had Maul's...
Okay, it's not naked Plagueis. Let's use the scientific term. Plagueis was hanging dong.
Okay.
Want to be clear?
I don't know. Yeah, so Palpatine gets Dooku to leave the Jedi, or talk to Dooku, who is leaving the Jedi Order, has been flirting with that idea throughout the whole...
For like a couple decades.
Yeah, the whole book series.
I thought the bit about his apprentice was kind of dumb, but I don't know if that comes from another book or not. I assume
Kamari Vosa? Yeah, the Bando Gora and Kamari Vosa were set up by a lot of other stuff beforehand.
Yeah.
I think she was in like the Bounty Hunter game, Boba Fett game.
Honestly, I never played that game.
But she'd shown up in a few things before, so that was definitely working in other bits that had been established elsewhere. And Dooku was upset about things that were happening into the Republic. And he was kind of hoping he'd find the Sith Lord. And Palpatine was thinking about whether or not he'd reveal himself, and was thinking, no, eventually I'll do it. But that's kind of...
I kind of wish we would have got to see it. I don't know, where do we actually see Palpatine, like, tell Dooku?
Do we?
I don't know. I assume we do somewhere. Maybe we might get a flashback in Revenge of the Sith novelization, but I don't remember. There's got to be somewhere. There's so many goddamn books from the Clone Wars. There's like literally 300. Wow.
Yeah, but...
Well, not literally, but better part of...
The 10 years between Episode 1 and 2, there's like Outbound Flight and Jedi Quest.
Well, there are... Yeah. There's got to be something. I don't know.
So we get Yaddle dying,
but there's a lot of but there's a lot of like there's the whole Republic comics. There are and there's a lot of young adult novels, or even
maybe Cloak of Deception.
Yeah, maybe I don't remember. That was never the Clone Wars was never one of my favorite eras, to be honest.
Yeah, because Cloak of Deception was also by James Luceno and had a lot of Qui-Gon stuff in it. I think it was before Episode 1, but I think it might have involved flash forwards, but no. Either way.
I can't remember. There's so many books set during that era. I'm trying to remember. There's like I think there's at least like 40 or 50 books set in this era, just like between the young adult ones, Yeah. A lot of them are just like Obi-Wan and Anakin, or Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan going on adventures, but whatever.
My teacher in middle school had like all the Jedi Quest books, so I ended up reading most of them there.
Yeah.
But we'll get to questions in a little bit, Boomshire.
Like Jedi Quest is like 10 or 11 books, I think, alone.
Yeah, but they're all like 60 pages, so...
Yeah, true.
Okay, I think that's it for major book points. But there's a few discussion points you got here. So is there anything we haven't talked about?
Do you think Vidar Kim's family was killed, or was it just an accident?
Don't they say that the Trade Federation took credit for that later on? Like Palpatine brings that up as a thing that the Trade Federation
They might have. I might have missed that.
Because when Palpatine's like airing Newt Gunray's dirty laundry, trying to explain who he is, I think it comes up that like, oh, you killed them, didn't you?
Gotcha. Okay, it's possible. That sounds right. I don't remember.
I think that's what happened. I could be wrong there.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Like, my only big thing here is, was Palpatine wrong to kill Plagueis? Like, would Palpatine have been better off if he had gone along with?
Yes, I think he would have been better off not killing Plagueis. Because he was doing Palpatine never like reached the I don't even think Palpatine reached like the some of the abilities Plagueis had with like resurrection and stuff.
No. And that was Palpatine's main issue in life, was that he died multiple times. So if Plagueis had been around, maybe that wouldn't have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And all of his apprentices were kind of shit. Like, let's be real. Maul, useless. Yeah. Dooku, never really wanted him as an apprentice in the first place. And then Anakin had him as an apprentice for 3 minutes, turned into a burning pile of whining, and I can't see Anakin being like a scholar of Sith lore and learning new.
No, not at all. Yeah, not at all. Yeah, I would say he would. I don't know. I just don't think that's possible with Palpatine's character, though. Yeah. But you also have to wonder, like, once they Palpatine did basically secure the galaxy, and then the question is like, what next after that? And that's like, I don't know, like after they've got full power, I do think that eventually Palpatine probably would have wanted to kill him at that point too. Just because.
But does Plagueis being involved curb some of the Empire's humanocentrism?
I don't think so, because Plagueis recognizes, he says at one point that the future belongs to humans. He's very pragmatic and practical about like the realities. I don't think he would have any problem. Like, yeah, and I mean, he specifically also helps bring in like various hive species and various alien species to be like the big bad guys for the CIS, which was like a clear attempt to, vilify aliens. So, yeah.
Anything else for you there?
I don't think so. Let me just check my points. I do like how Coruscant, I like how they describe it as like basically a shit planet for both the Jedi and the Republic, because it's just festering. So like Republic senators are just like always being corrupted and stuff. And then the Jedi, they say like it could have been a force nexus for the light, basically, like Korriban was for the dark, but because it's so fake and there's so much like
the Tapcafs of iniquity.
Yeah, exactly. That it's not. So yeah, I do like how we see like the clones be like the perfect. They're like the perfect way to kill the Jedi, because it's like two birds with one stone. Because you're lessening the Jedi's standing, because you're throwing them into a military role, which they're not supposed to do, and you have beings with every Jedi across the galaxy. Because a lot of the problems with trying to wipe out the Jedi is the fact that they're spread out so far. But if you bring them into war, then you can kill all the combat capable ones, which Plagueis says will be enough.
They don't need to kill Jocasta Nu and Tion.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why Anakin was able to just waltz through Temple.
Yeah, because he was fighting like he was going against like the third liners.
Yeah. The younglings, librarians, and Syndralig.
Yeah.
Really kind of undercuts Vader as this scary figure capable of all that.
It's like all the clones are out there. I think the clones are just like watching like the news and just like fuming. Like they had to like gun down like, I was gonna say Mace Windu, but obviously not. They had to like gun down like the hero Jedi masters, and Anakin's just like killing the janitor and like the Jedi healer and shit.
All right, so I guess rankings and then questions.
For me, I think this has got to be number one. I'm kind of surprised, because I really prefer the New Republic era, and I like the older books. Like I like the Bantam era, but this is just so well written. It's so adult. It's even got like difficult language. Like there are words in this book that like I had to look up. I mean, I didn't have to understand the context, but because I was curious. Yeah, very well written. It's like it expertly uses other material. Yeah, it's just really well done. The third act is definitely the weakest by far, but it's just an exploration of the universe we don't really see in anything else. So, number one.
So just for everyone out there, Eckhart's current ranking is Plagueis first, Rogue Squadron second, Back to War third, Wedge's Gamble fourth, Truce of Picurus fifth, and Krytos Trap is sixth. I'm gonna have to agree. I'm putting Plagueis first. Basically, I don't know that it'd be a book that I'd recommend to like someone coming in new to Star Wars, because like the thing it does best is that it is such a repository of Legends references. But because what my favorite part of Star Wars is the broader universe building rather than necessarily the individual stories, it basically is exactly what I would want out of a book like this. And it doesn't have quite the same like fun character moments that the X-Wing books do, but I think overall,
the world building is phenomenal.
Yeah,
it's like with X-Wing, like the world building is sometimes off because it's like still kind of figuring stuff out. But like this is the exact opposite. Everything feels just like it should.
Yeah.
Scale is always right. The like the way things are portrayed or the descriptions of things are always right. You know, so
yeah. And it did have the benefit of being basically like the last Legends novel, but it still, I'm not going to take away from it for that. It takes the number one spot for me. So my rankings are currently Plagueis, then I put the Back Door, then Rogue Squadron, which is a gamble. What are you laughing? Truce of Bakura, and then the Krytos Trap is also.
Why is the Back Door always the second option for you, Corey?
Look, if I just wanted to put number 2 as the Back Door, then I don't know.
It's an association that can't be broken. I'd be curious to see where Wraith Squadron will be. It's been a long time since I've read it.
So yeah, I guess just a reminder before we get into the questions here for anyone who drops out. For those that our next episode, we do alternate who hosts these. So next episode is going to be on Eckhart's Ladders on the Eckhart's Ladder YouTube channel, Justin's YouTube channel. So make sure you are subscribed to him if you're only subscribed to mine so far. And that'll be Thursday, the 22nd of August. We are going to be doing Wraith Squadron, and we are going to have Star Wars Explained as our guest, our first guest.
Big Daddy YouTube.
Yep, we have
Poppy.
We're going to have to make a new layout, I think. But
ooh,
maybe I'll
shift
like 2 things.
Canceled.
We'll just give him 2 slots or something, and then.
How about we just take that little? Hey, okay. First of all, where did Sheev go?
You don't. I took him away a while ago.
Have you had conversation with Alex before? Didn't you guys do a stream together?
Yeah, on Templin's charity stream. Me and him were both there.
Awesome.
We're gonna have to make sure that he doesn't have any kind of like base camp for this, because then people will get confused about which is him and which is me.
Yeah, you guys do look pretty damn similar.
Canadian Star Wars Explained.
Yeah.
Datapad. I almost said my last name there. That was probably not
good.
Problem, but whatever.
Yeah, I'm gonna dox you just for fun.
Someone tried to do that before. Another Empire at War modder tried to dox me and threatened to put my information on Craigslist, but the information he got was from my ISP. So didn't matter.
You'd be like, no one would care. Like, what are you going to do? Like, if you don't buff the Lancer, I'm sending shit to your house.
People get really into that.
So I swear to God, Corey, if you don't add shield penetration, I'm gonna go to your house and kick you in the nuts.
Not the only thing that's gonna get
shield penetrated. Okay, with that ridiculousness out of the way, let's go into a question we have. Corey, do you know who this is from?
So Jacob, I believe. I'm gonna double check.
Okay. So he
I
had
believe
sort
I
of
made
3
fun of you
questions.
for this last time.
Wait,
And
what?
now I think I made fun of you for not having the name on hand last time for the email, and now I'm doing the exact same thing.
Yep.
Yeah, it was
So how's that
Jacob
feel?
Cornwell who sent us our first question here.
Well, thank you, Jacob. You guys can, if you have any questions, you can always send them to our email. That's tapcaftransmissions@gmail.com. Despite what this thumbnail says, there's not actually an E in Tapcaf.
Yeah, it's
Corey,
just this thumbnail. It's the
your
stream
shit
overlay
started,
is
bud.
fine. When I write it, it's usually fine. But I believe you were the one that was championing the E as being part of the
Listen,
name.
let's not. Okay, so let's read the question.
Who made the thumbnail and then sent the other person the thumbnail?
Let's not shift blame, bud.
I can't remember who did that.
What did you think of?
I think it was Captain Shack.
Yeah, it was Captain Shack. That's right. What did you think of the one potential recruit Plagueis found, the one who could see the rise of the Empire through Force visions and tried to teach people to be selfish and be willing to betray others at a moment's notice? Do you want to tackle this one, Corey?
I feel like that was the one of those 3 that I would have liked a bit more information on. We kind of talked about that earlier, where the Nautilin and the Gambler were kind of pointless, but then she was worth having in the book.
Yeah.
And she was basically just there as a way to get everything right, but yeah.
Yeah. Because so he kills her because he's like, the galaxy's not ready to know, but like she's willing to spread other messages, and like he allows the Shiadu to survive, basically to cause havoc. I wonder why he didn't do the same with her.
Yeah. Did he electrocute her to death, or
Yeah, he like he's holding her hand and he like shocks her. You definitely poop your pants if you die that way, for sure. Let's be honest, like when Luke's getting electrocuted by Palpatine, like he definitely dropped a turd. Like, did you see the way he's writhing around on the ground there?
Is this what you're just thinking about whenever you're reading or watching?
Every time I watch Return of the Jedi, I'm like, man, he's
who is defecating when?
Like he's pooping his drawers right now.
What about Vader? The same thing happens to him.
It happens to Vader. It probably happens to Han when he awakens from carbon freezing, and Jabba when he's choked out.
Not when he awakens from carbon freezing, unless he had to go beforehand.
Well, he wasn't. He was locked up for quite a while, and I bet you Vader didn't give him a chance.
He wasn't digesting. Yeah, but he would have been in like the whole point of carbon freezing is he's in the exact same state as when
Corey,
he went in.
You don't think he grabbed a? He was just having dinner with
Vader.
That
was the most like disappointed I've ever heard anyone say my name. Corey.
What were they doing? He was having dinner with Vader.
They walked in thinking they were. Did they ever actually have dinner?
There was a full spread. You're not going to waste that on Cloud City. You know how hard it is to get material there?
Yeah, there was still the full spread when they finished, wasn't there?
Full spread. No, you only see them walk in. Then he closes the door. Have you even seen?
So we don't know how much food he ate.
Fans.
We don't know how much food he ate. You're predicating your whole argument on.
Okay, it doesn't matter. Even if he hadn't,
it would have been like an hour. It was an hour
he wasn't expecting to be locked up. Nuh-uh, because they had to wait for. They had to wait for Luke. They were torturing him. You think Han is going to use the bathroom in the prison in front of Princess Leia? No.
They were testing it because they wanted to know if they could use it on Luke. So they would have been waiting for Luke to test it. He was already frozen.
Yeah. They wait for Luke to arrive because remember they're torturing him.
Okay.
He's frozen right before he gets there.
So what if he went to the bathroom in prison?
In front of Leia.
Well, that's how prison works.
Okay, next person who poops himself would be Jabba. Because he gets choked out, and I think that's a notoriously common... Plus, he's a giant food slug. I think that's mostly it. Some of the Ewoks when C-3PO is being levitated.
So what happens when Darth Maul is cut in half and he loses control?
I already explained this. He poops out of his nose.
No, but that initial poop.
Oh, well, he's falling. He doesn't poop, but his lower body poops.
Well, that's still him, I'd argue.
Well, I don't know.
Until he hits the ground, both halves are him.
I guess so.
All right. Second question. So we did talk about the Tenebrous Way earlier. And so, if anyone else has any questions, poop related or not, feel free to leave them in the comments while we go over these last two here, or in the chat while we go over these last two here. And,
Errol Cyranid definitely pooped himself when he hit the executor.
Is an explosion, does that count as a poop?
I just figure you might as well if you're going in.
Well, if he's splattered 3 seconds later everywhere, does he have the organs? Like, can you describe what's happening to him as pooping at any point?
I can, but you wouldn't understand it.
So what we need is for you to show up to the next one with a frame by frame.
Listen, what you don't know is that I'm actually consulting on episode 9. So all of these questions will be handled much more neatly in the next movie.
Well, we have to go through all the previous movies first to make sure we know exactly what frames people are or aren't pooping in.
Well, next episode, at the end of the next episode, we'll address episode 1.
All right.
Just a hint, Sebulba, prime candidate.
Well, thanks for tuning into the last episode of Tapcaf Transmissions, everyone.
The FTC is somehow going to take us off the air. We're on YouTube and in Canada. Out of all the other Rule of Two Sith mentioned, Tenebrous, Twi'lek Master, Gravid, Gian, Rampage, Vectivus, Guile, which one would you have most liked to have a full novel about, like Plagueis? For me, it would be Undeadu, just because his name is Undeadu, and or Andedu, but the narrator said Undeadu, and that's canon for me now, because his ability was transferring his spirit. Undeadu. So
wasn't Deadu actually mentioned in the book? I don't.
Yeah, he's mentioned on one occasion, because Plagueis says he doesn't want to just be able to transfer his spirit like to a talisman like Andedu did. I guess he was. Yeah, I guess he was before Rule of Two. Did Vectivus even have an apprentice?
He must have.
I guess, but he was kind of just chilling in his well, not a bachelor pad, but.
Because when was Vectivus? I think he would have been fairly close to Tenebrous'
You know what?
master.
I actually don't. Yeah.
Actually, he's described as centuries before. And I'm pretty sure what Lumaya says about him is like mostly horseshit. But
yeah, I agree, because she's lying to Jason, I think. It's like, oh yeah, he wouldn't do any bad shit. He was cool. Don't look over there. That's the rape dungeon. I mean, that's the meditation dungeon.
Jesus.
I don't know. Gravid seemed kind of cool. I don't know. I don't really like any of them that much.
Yeah, I think Gravid and his apprentice were the only ones that we got enough information of to know whether or not it would be interesting. Tenebrous, we get enough information about him, like how he died.
Yeah.
That I'm fine with that, and then we know what his interests were. But I think Gravid and more Darth Gian than Gravid.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. She was a she, right?
Gain, yeah.
The apprentice? Yeah, she seemed pretty cool.
There were actually a lot of Twi'lek Sith Lords, apparently, in this period.
Yeah. Orn Free Ta. Hidden Sith.
You never know. They were out there.
Nah, he's way too fat.
Okay.
Next question, we got one from Joel Davis in the chat. Just got here, don't know if you talked about this, but how do you feel about Plagueis being alive so close to the Phantom Menace? I have a friend who thinks it undercuts Sidious in terms of agency in the films. I don't think it really to me, that's not important, because I think it's a cool story. Besides, Sidious still has full agency over the political side, which is basically what we see in the Phantom Menace anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, like part of the point of the third section is that Plagueis is detached from all the political stuff, or not all of it, but he gets Palpatine.
Kind of reattached, but yeah.
Yeah, and that Palpatine was really the driving force behind all that. So I don't think it undermines or undercuts anything that Sidious was doing. I think he still gets a lot of the credit for that, and the stuff that Plagueis is doing is stuff that it makes sense for Plagueis to have been doing. So I'm fine with it. I just think it's kind of funny, the idea of like 10 meters off screen at every scene with Palpatine in episode 1 that Plagueis is like standing right there.
I know. Like if you listen closely, you can hear the respirator. Shh, turn that down. Shh, they're talking out there. There is a lot of in the book moments where, like, if someone was just looking in the wrong or in the right direction, the whole conspiracy. Like, if someone had looked and saw Maul and Palpatine standing out there, it could have been trouble. If someone looked in Plagueis' apartment, well, like, Sage was putting on a light show, that could have been trouble.
In the chat, we have a question about from Boomshire about the first 4 X-Wing books. Proton Torps are blue and Race Squadron books are red, which is correct. I think it just is the model of proton torpedoes that matters there. I don't think it's either one being wrong. Like, we see them as red in the movies, but they're also blue at some point in some of the editions. I don't think either is wrong.
Yeah, just like turbo lasers, just could be different slightly, or one could be concussion missiles or something.
Yeah, it's like the trail
any company could make.
That...
Oh yeah, like any company could make them, right? So
yeah, so it can all work.
Yep.
Another question we have: what was the Maleficent meant to be before the Clone Wars? I'm not sure what you're referring to there.
What was the what supposed to be before the Clone
Maleficent?
Wars? Maleficent? Does he mean the malevolence?
I think he might mean that, but I don't know that it was meant to be anything before.
Yeah, I don't think it had a. I don't think it's like the Death Star where it had like some sort of. Yeah.
But then we have, how do you guys think Plagueis compares to Darth Tenebrous, Vitiate, and Valkyrion?
I never liked Valkyrion much, or Vitiate. But both have kind of the same idea of prolonging life, and he does mention Vitiate at one point as well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Sith Lords get mentioned. Malak gets mentioned. Nihilus gets mentioned. Vitiate gets mentioned. I think Nihilus. Yeah, he does get mentioned once.
I think Nihilus and Scion both get mentioned when he's
talking about, like, right, because he's like about like ugly Sith.
Yeah.
Same with that one from the.
That was like a weird flex on Palpatine, wasn't it? Like, you're gonna be ugly too.
He's like, yeah, he's like, oh, will you when you become strong in the Force? Will you look ugly like me? Well, I don't know, but I don't worry about it. I think my grain bin's blown away. Yes. Nothing I can do about it now.
Oh, well, get some F's in chat for Justin's green bin.
Oh, I mean, I was walking down the street the other day, just dead ass raccoon right on the sidewalk.
Nice.
Nice.
Well, I was walking back from Gatineau, just over the bridge from Ottawa, and I looked up in a tree, and there was the largest raccoon I've ever seen, just staring down at me from like 2 feet above my head on a bridge.
Okay, that one wasn't close to me, but we have them because I've got like a green belt kind of behind my house, and there's like deer sometimes. And one day I just heard this screeching. I was like, "Oh my god, there's like a child in the tree." It's like 3 big ass raccoons just like eyeing my dogs.
You're
gonna snatch him. But yeah, my cat sleeps outside, right?
Mm-hmm.
And today usually he'll bring mice to the house, he'll kill them and leave them on the step or whatever. Today he brought this big ass rat, man. It's like the most disgusting shit I've ever seen. This huge rat, like it had nasty old teeth. Like the cat came inside and slept for like 3 hours. And I'm like, what's wrong with him? But I think he was just like in a full, like he was recovering his like HP. This thing was massive. I picked him up. I got like a pooper scooper for the dog poop. Picked him up and just yeeted him into my neighbor's backyard.
We've been over this. You're not allowed to use that term.
Well, I've used it twice this episode. Oh, the munificent frigate.
Oh,
it was probably like a censorship or something, wasn't it? Because that's what they're always described as.
I think it's usually called the Banking Clan Communications Frigate in other stuff before the name. But they actually mentioned the Capital class, like one of those, and it's referred to as a Capital class ship.
What did they mention? Sorry.
There's what I assume is a Munificent that's mentioned in the book. He calls it a Capital class, which I assume was supposed to be like its size range, as opposed to actually being called a Capital class. Let's see. A freshly minted Capital class starship returned Plagueis and Hill to Naboo, manufactured by Horst Kessel and Gwari The vessel was shaped like an elongated pod with a flat underbelly. A lateral wing transected the convex hull aft.
That does sound like it.
That sounds like it's supposed to be magnificent, which means whatever section that was in. I think that was the second section.
I imagine
Actually,
that.
no, this was the
when
first
I read
section.
that, I thought that was like a shuttle-sized ship. I didn't quite pick up on how big it was.
Yeah, I think it is. It's meant to be a magnificent, and it's like 67 ABY or BBY.
Okay, so pretty early on.
Yeah. But yeah, there's that.
Cool.
Anyone have anything else?
No. Yeah. Any other comments? This book was fun to read, but it was kind of a good slog. Like last night, I had a lot left, so I just took my Kindle and just like went for a walk. I walked like 14 kilometers, finished it.
Well, reading?
Yeah.
That's
like
dangerous.
dead at night too. Yeah. In a good neighborhood.
I just mean like walking into something.
Oh, mostly like sidewalks and stuff.
I don't know.
But yeah, I think that's it for me. I gotta go rescue my green bin.
All right.
Just a reminder, guys. Not next week, week after, as always. Consider tuning in. And also, guys, this book is great on audiobook. The narrator is phenomenal. It's really, really enjoyable. It's unabridged. I think it's about 16 or 17 hours long. So I'd highly, highly recommend it. You can always find Audible codes, no problem. So.
All right. So I guess we're gonna let you go and rescue your green bin. So thanks for watching, everyone. And again, tune in 2 weeks from now for our discussion of Wraith Squadron with Star Wars Explained. Bye, everyone.
Yeet!
Oh my god.